Germany of Iron and Blood. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376, Unwilling. Your Majesty, the Germans are really deceiving people too much, Merriweather said to Franz Joseph I angrily after von Kidron-Wascht left the palace. Germany made peace with Russia first, and then distributed them a little bit of benefits at will, just like sending beggars, which is really indignant. The smile on Franz Joseph I's face also disappeared completely. His amiable face just now was simply an act of faking. As the emperor of an empire, even if he is old, he cannot tolerate others treating him like this. I am also very angry. But, Your Excellency, what do you think we can do now? Torn face with the Germans? Or, like the Italians, directly betray Germany and go to war with them? Franz Joseph I asked back. Suddenly, Merriweather was speechless. He naturally knew that the Austro-Hungarian Empire would definitely not be able to tear itself apart from Germany. As for the betrayal of Germany, there is no way to talk about it. Anyone can see that the Allies have already gained the upper hand in this war. It doesn't seem to be a problem to win the final victory. If at this time they still betrayed the German Empire and joined the Allied powers, it would undoubtedly be something that a fool could do. If you betray the German Empire, join the Entente, and defeat Germany, that's fine. But if that fails to defeat Germany, it is really a dead end. Franz Joseph I and Merriweather were very aware of the strength of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Although the Austro-Hungarian Empire also had 2 or 3 million troops. But if there is a real fight, it is estimated that Germany only needs to dispatch 2 or 3 legions to defeat them. Although, in the previous battle, to defeat the Russian Southwest Front Army, the Austro-Hungarian army also contributed a huge amount of strength. But they all know how much the Austro-Hungarian Empire has contributed in this. It can be said that the German 8th Army played a vital role in defeating the Russian Southwest Front. Without the German 8th Army, the Austro-Hungarian Empire would have been defeated. No, they launched another attack later, trying to gore off a piece of fat on the Russians when Russia was at its weakest. The result was defeated instead, and the loss was not small. Your Excellency, the Germans will do this. No wonder our own strength is too weak. If it were us, if our strength is much stronger than the Germans, we can simply ignore the Germans in this world. After all, the strong will prey on the weak. Franz Joseph I said somewhat helplessly. The essence of this world is that the weak prey on the strong. Merriweather nodded. Your Majesty, I understand. Judging from the current situation, the Allies have a better chance of winning in this war. Therefore, we can gain more benefits by staying in the Allies. In addition, if in this war, if we can take the Balkan Peninsula and cut off a piece of meat from the Italians, that would be good. The war reparations of 2 billion marks are not a small amount. People are often like this. If you change your thinking, many problems can be figured out. This is undoubtedly the case with the current Austro-Hungarian Empire. German Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wascht did not stay long in Vienna. After meeting Franz Joseph I, he met with Archduke Friedrich and Baron Marshal Herzendorf respectively. The commanders-in-chief of the 2 Austrian armies also expressed their understanding of Germany's approach to Russia. After all, they all knew that such a change in Russia was entirely planned by the Germans, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire did not contribute much in the war against Russia. Of course, they paid a lot of casualties for this, but that was simply because the Austrian army was too weak. If they are strong, maybe Germany will have to consider their attitude and let them get a share. Von Kidron-Wascht seems to have selectively forgotten to visit Crown Prince Karol. As the Crown Prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Karol's status is undoubtedly very high. In Reason, von Kidron-Wascht should also pay a visit. However, von Kidron-Wascht went directly back to Germany the next day, which made everyone's jaw drop. Damn Germans, they didn't take me seriously at all. After the German foreign minister left, Crown Prince Karol was furious in his palace. The actions of the Germans undoubtedly gave him a slap in the face, making him, the Crown Prince, not know where to put his face. Von Kidron-Wascht did this, of course, on purpose. On the one hand, the German intelligence agencies are well aware that Crown Prince Carol is fanning the ghostly wind and destroying the relationship between the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. On the other hand, when Germany and Austria jointly dealt with the Russian army, Crown Prince Carol also targeted Qin Tian's von Kidron-Wascht several times. This time, he took this opportunity to severely humiliate him up. As Franz Joseph I got older, Crown Prince Carol's influence in the Austro-Hungarian Empire continued to increase. After all, compared with Franz Joseph I, Crown Prince Carol is not a wise king. But who told Franz Joseph I that he was not far from meeting God? Isn't the future empire all owned by Crown Prince Carol? This made the nobles and elites of the Austro-Hungarian Empire more willing to maintain a good relationship with Crown Prince Carol. However, after the German foreign minister did not give Crown Prince Carol face, many people quickly realized that Germany was not satisfied with Crown Prince Carol. Although, it was not Germany's turn to interfere in the internal affairs of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. However, once Germany wins the war, it will undoubtedly become the hegemony of the world. Even though Crown Prince Carol inherited the throne and became the monarch of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. However, if he offends the world overlord, even if Crown Prince Carol becomes emperor, he will inevitably be greatly suppressed. This also made many people who originally planned to get closer to Crown Prince Carol couldn't help but stop planning to wait and see again to see if there would be any changes in the future. After Crown Prince Carol knew about this situation, he was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. In addition, Germany is very unwilling to monopolize a large area of Russia's territory. In his opinion, those territories should have been part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Chapter 377, Trap. Admiralty, London, United Kingdom. Navy Minister Churchill just sent the Prime Minister's office back, and the current situation is becoming more and more unfavorable for Britain. Sure enough, Russia made peace with Germany, which made Germany no longer have to worry about fighting on two fronts. It is foreseeable that the Germans will soon launch a large-scale offensive on the Western Front. Whether the British and French allied forces can withstand the German attack will be directly related to whether they can persist in this war. Under such circumstances, not only the French are frantically arming more troops. At the same time, the United Kingdom is also trying to grow the expeditionary force, trying to withstand future German attacks. The British Navy has not yet come out of the heavy losses. Although the Queen Elizabeth-class battleship has already entered service, the Revenge-class battleship will soon enter service. This restored the strength of the British Navy compared to before. However, Churchill was not at all optimistic about the future decisive battle at sea, because he knows very well that, even if the British Navy has 10 with more battleships, equipped with 381mm main guns, it may not be the opponent of the German Navy. Therefore, he can only pin his hopes on the battleships that will be built later. It's just that Germany obviously won't give them that much time. The German Navy is frantically strangling Britain's sea transportation lines. All British merchant ships were either sunk or captured directly. This makes Britain, which is extremely dependent on maritime trade, almost trapped to death. If it weren't for the fact that American merchant ships have been transporting various supplies to the United Kingdom, they might not be able to persist long ago. As if to further intensify the attack on Britain, the German Navy's submarines and breaching fleet even launched attacks on British fishing boats. This directly caused a sharp decline in the seafood that the United Kingdom could obtain from the ocean. Britain is a highly industrialized country, and its domestic food production is not high. Most of the food they consume comes from abroad. As an island country, seafood is also an important food on the table of the British. After the sea transportation line was cut off, in order to avoid famine, the British government called on fishermen to increase the amount of fishing to ensure the domestic food supply. But it is a pity that when more and more fishing boats were sunk by the Germans, it directly caused those fishermen to dare not go to sea again. Even if you go out to sea, you just circle around the sea. In that case, how many fish can you catch? This also makes the possibility of famine in Britain greatly increased. Prime Minister Asquith summoned the ministers of the British cabinet to discuss countermeasures. No, we can't let the Germans continue to be so rampant. Otherwise, our cutting-edge warships have not been built, and Britain has been dragged down. By then, Britain will lose in this war. The colonial system that the British Empire has maintained for hundreds of years will collapse. Churchill murmured. If the German Navy can be defeated in one fell swoop and the current crisis can be resolved, that would be the best. But it is a pity that the current Royal Navy does not have such strength at all. The German fleet is very strong, especially when there are battle cruisers equipped with 380mm main guns. Even if we send the Queen Elizabeth class battleships to fight, we may not be able to get a cheap one. Since there is no way to deal with the German fleet, we must find a way to deal with their submarines. If the German submarines can be eliminated, our threat will be much smaller, Churchill thought. Among the losses caused by the German Navy to British merchant ships, the broken fleet did not account for the largest share. Those seemingly inconspicuous submarines became the main force to cut off the British sea transportation line. Especially when the German Navy holds the initiative, it can dispatch a large number of merchant ships and transport ships to provide supplies for these submarines and increase the residence time in the ocean. These submarines, with their elusive attack methods, are hard to guard against and directly caused great losses to the British merchant ships. A large number of British merchant ships were sunk by German submarines. Although the German Navy's breaking fleet is very strong, it is impossible to completely block the British coast because of its quantity. If the submarines of the German Navy can be solved, then the crisis in Britain can be alleviated to a certain extent. Under such circumstances, Churchill directly issued an order to the British Navy Grand Fleet, asking them to find a way to get rid of the German submarines. Admiral John Jellicoe also had a headache after receiving the order. The German submarines, hiding underwater to launch an attack, are not so easy to find. Although British scientists have developed sonar. However, the sonar of this period was extremely crude, and it was not at all like the sonar of later generations, which could accurately locate underwater targets. Therefore, the British Navy launched several attacks against German submarines, but did not achieve much results. Although, from the outbreak of the war to the present, Germany has lost more than a dozen submarines. But except for a very few that were sunk by the British Navy, most of the rest were lost due to their own failures. Lost these submarines, but in exchange for the cut-off of the British sea transportation line, this price is undoubtedly worth it. Admiral John Jellicoe, a staff officer of the British Navy, proposed a battle plan in order to complete Churchill's order. After seeing the plan, Admiral John Jellicoe was very satisfied and immediately flew to London to report the battle plan to Prime Minister Churchill. Your Excellency, this is the battle plan we came up with. The German submarines often surfaced, threatened our merchant ships with naval guns, and surrendered to them. Many merchant ships without any weapons were killed under such circumstances. Therefore, we can take advantage of this situation to ambush the German submarine, or in other words, set a trap for the German submarine and wait for them to step in by themselves. Admiral John Jellicoe said, the British Navy plans to prepare 20 merchant ships. On these merchant ships, small caliber rapid fire guns were secretly arranged, pretending to return to the British mainland from North America, or from the British mainland to North America. Once a German submarine surfaced and was about to capture these British merchant ships, the British sailors in civilian clothes manipulated those small caliber rapid fire guns, attack the German submarine and sink it. There is no doubt that this is a very stupid way. However, Churchill could only adopt such a tactic when there was no other way. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378, Stand by and wait for the rabbit. The Atlantic Ocean in February is the coldest time of the year. The cold wind from the Arctic Ocean blows on a person's face, as if cutting with a knife. But even so, the officers and soldiers of the German Navy are still cruising in the Atlantic Ocean. A breakaway fleet composed of several battle cruisers focused on searching the waters west of the British Isles. And those submarine forces hunted freely in the Atlantic Ocean. As soon as a merchant ship or warship flying the British flag is spotted, an attack is launched immediately. Of course, facing the warship, it is to launch the torpedo directly. If it is a merchant ship, the submarine of the German Navy is more willing to float up and use the naval gun on the bow to force the British merchant ship to surrender. After all, capturing a merchant ship can gain more military exploits than sinking a merchant ship. Germany also needs a large number of merchant ships for overseas trade and transportation of combat materials. Therefore, the German Admiralty also encouraged the fleet and submarine forces to capture British merchant ships. This also made those captains take the capture of British merchant ships as their first choice. A merchant ship flying the British flag is sailing about 1,000 kilometers west of the island of Ireland. The deck of this merchant ship was covered with thick canvas. The merchant ship has a deep draft, and it seems to be loaded with a lot of supplies. A middle-aged sailor was standing on the deck smoking a cigarette. The cold sea breeze blew on his face, making his whole face numb. However, he did not enter the cabin, but took out the binoculars from time to time to search the surrounding sea. This is not an ordinary civilian version of the telescope, but a military high-powered telescope. Damn it, why didn't any of the German submarines disappear? We have been wandering in the sea for a week, but we haven't found a single German submarine. The luck is too bad. The middle-aged sailor cursed. This middle-aged sailor is Captain Schmidt of the British Navy. Originally, at his age, he should not have performed such a task. After all, his previous position was the captain of a destroyer. However, when the Admiralty selected members for the mission, he voluntarily signed up. Not because of anything else, but because he wanted to avenge his brother. His younger brother was a merchant sailor. 3 months ago, it was sunk by a German submarine on the route from Canada to the British mainland. Captain, you still haven't found the target, right? The weather is really too cold. A young sailor said to Captain Schmidt. Idiot, didn't you say that? Don't call me the captain. Call me the captain now. When the Germans find out, no one can escape. Captain Schmidt cursed. Okay, Captain. Hasn't the German been found yet? The young sailor muttered. Captain, the first officer asked me to inform you. Our supplies are running out. If the German submarine is not found before tonight, we may have to return. The young sailor said. Damn. Why can't you bring more supplies when you go to sea? Captain Schmidt scolded. Okay, tell Simon, if we can't find the German submarine before dark, we will retreat. May God bless us and sink a German submarine. I must avenge my poor brother. Captain Schmidt prayed to God. On the sea not far from the British merchant ship, a German submarine was sailing on the water. Due to the technology of this era, submarines cannot sail underwater for a long time. Most of the time, they sail on the water surface. Only dive into the water when attacking or evading enemy warships. In order to prevent the submarine from fighting on the water, there is also a special dual-mounted 75mm naval gun on the bow of the submarine. The hull number of this submarine is U-113, which belongs to an earlier batch of submarines. The construction of these submarines ceased after Deutschwerft had produced 100 of the improved U-boats. Subsequent production is a further improved model. The hatch of the submarine was opened, and a submarine officer wearing a thick jacket got out from inside. Behind him, there were several other submarine soldiers. These submariners usually nest in the small space of the submarine, very stuffy. So, every once in a while, after making sure that there is no danger around them, they will get out of the submarine, go to the surface for some activities and relax. Sir, we haven't opened this week yet. Not to mention the British merchant ships, we haven't even seen a single warship. A submarine soldier pinched a cigarette *** in his hand and said, who knows? If you want to encounter British ships now, you have to rely on God's blessing. In the past 6 months, have there been fewer British merchant ships and warships killed by us? I guess the British have already been scared by us. The captain spit out a smoke ring. Sir, British ships are not common in the Atlantic Ocean now. However, American ships are almost all over the Atlantic Ocean. It would be great if we can attack American ships. Another said the submariner. HMPH. American ships are not so easy to deal with. They haven't participated in the war yet, and the Empire has no name to attack them. The captain shook his head. Sir, the Americans are just hanging a fig leaf as a neutral country. I can guarantee that there must be a lot of minerals and weapons in the materials they transported to the UK. The Americans are using us to fight against the British. Everyone. Make war fortune. Well, I don't know how the higher-ups think about it. It would be great if the higher-ups can authorize us to launch attacks on American merchant ships. Every time I see an American merchant ship slipping past my eyes, I will drool. Okay, shut up. It's not up to us to decide what the higher-ups consider. If we want to start a war against the Americans, we only need to obey orders, said the captain. Yes, sir. The other submariners replied. Have a good rest. Let me go in. Continue to go north and try your luck, the captain ordered. Yes, sir. The submarine crew filed into the submarine, and the captain was the last one. When the submarine went north for half an hour, they received a telegram. This is from the Admiralty, a scout ship, who has spotted a British merchant ship to the north. Suddenly, the captain of the U-113 submarine immediately ordered to advance at full speed to catch up with the British merchant ship. A submarine sails on the water at a much faster speed than a merchant ship. However, the German naval officers and soldiers on this submarine did not know that the British merchant ship was just a decoy. From beginning to end, this was a trap set by the British to deal with German merchant ships. The officers and soldiers of the merchant ships, British Navy are waiting on the ground, waiting for the German submarine to throw itself into the net. Chapter 379, All Sunk. Find the target and shoot for warning. After the U-113 submarine of the German Navy caught up with the British merchant ship, the captain followed the predetermined steps and merchant to prepare to force the British ship to land. According to the usual practice, once the shell explodes around the British merchant ship, the British sailors on board will be scared to death. At that time, they will only obey the orders of the German submarine. As long as you send a few soldiers up and control the core cabin of the merchant ship, you can drive the merchant ship to join the German Navy's breaking fleet. The British merchant ship was then sent back to Germany by the breaking fleet. Boom. Boom. 2 shells exploded beside the British merchant ship. The sound of the explosion startled all the British naval officers and soldiers on board. Damn, where did the shells come from? Captain Schmidt asked loudly. Sir, the German submarine is 2 kilometers away from us, a British Navy soldier reported. German submarine? Haha, God forbid, they are finally here. Tell everyone, hold your breath. Without my order, absolutely do not fire, Captain Schmidt ordered. He was afraid that other naval soldiers would fire early because of nervousness, thus scaring away the German submarine. Once danger is found, the submarine will inevitably divergently. With the performance of their merchant ships, it is impossible to find submarines hiding underwater. What's more, it will also make their plans leaked, and there will never be such an opportunity in the future. Sir, the Germans used semaphore to ask us to stop the ship immediately, a sailor reported to Captain Schmidt. Do as the Germans say. Others are ready. Once they hear my order, they immediately uncover the canvas and start shooting. This time, we must eliminate the German submarine. Captain Schmidt calmly ordered follow the order. However, from his slightly trembling hands, it can be clearly seen that he is also very nervous in his heart. The U-113 submarine of the German Navy did not find anything unusual about the British merchant ship at all. After confirming that the British merchant ship followed their orders and began to stop the ship, they immediately moved closer to it. Watching the German submarine getting closer and closer to them, the British naval officers and soldiers on the merchant ship were all very nervous and dared not breathe. Soon, the German submarine was less than 200 meters away from the British merchant ship. Attack immediately. Captain Schmidt ordered immediately. The British naval soldiers on the merchant ship immediately lifted off the canvas on the deck. A 2-pounder and a 1-pounder appeared. These rapid-fire guns are already ready to fire. The soldiers of the British Navy took aim and started shooting immediately. The submarine of the German army also discovered the strangeness of the British. When they saw the rapid-fire guns, their expressions changed drastically. Damn it. This is a trap set by the British. Make an emergency dive. Immediately make an emergency dive. The captain of the U-113 submarine immediately issued an order. Although, the submariners immediately filled the tank with water, and the submarine began to dive. But because of technical reasons, it takes at least 2 or 3 minutes for a submarine of this era to complete the dive. And the British obviously won't give them that long. Boom. 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 The rapid fire guns on the British merchant ship have already started firing. Cannonballs roared and fired towards the German submarine 200 meters away. The shell exploded in the sea, splashing jets of water. Although the 2-pound rapid fire gun and the 1-pound rapid fire gun are not very powerful, their rate of fire is very fast. What's more, the defense of submarines in this era is not strong. The steel plates used by submarines are also very thin steel plates, which simply cannot withstand the rapid fire artillery shells of the British Army. Hurry up. God bless you. The captain of the U-133 submarine kept praying to God. However, they still failed to escape their bad luck in the end. The shells of the British Army hit the hull of the submarine and easily blasted out holes of different sizes in the hull of the submarine. Seawater poured into the submarine from these holes. Although the German Navy sailors on the submarine desperately carried out damage control, however, it still failed. They can only watch their submarine sink into the cold Atlantic seabed. Of course, they failed to escape, and the submarine became their steel coffin. Good job, we sank the German submarine. Seeing the German submarine sinking into the sea, a large amount of oil and some rags poured out of the sea. These are undoubtedly proofs that the German submarine was sunk. Long live. Long live. The British naval officers and soldiers on the merchant ship all cheered. This is undoubtedly a remarkable victory for them. In the confrontation between the Royal Navy and the German Navy, they have failed too many times, and the possibility of them achieving results is too low. Faced with this tactic of the British Navy, the German Navy's submarine force was not prepared at all. So much so that when these submarines happily wanted to capture British merchant ships, they discovered that these British merchant ships were not sheep at all, but wolves armed to the teeth. Under this trap of the British, the submarine force of the German Navy lost more than a dozen submarines. Such intensive losses immediately attracted the attention of the German Navy. After all, even when they were fighting the British Navy most fiercely, they never lost so many submarines. When the Minister of the Navy, Marshal Earl Tirpitz, informed Qin Tian of this news, Qin Tian was also taken aback. He thought that the British had come up with some high-tech weapons under the strong pressure of Germany. For example, the advanced sonar that restrains the submarines of the German Navy. In that case, their subs would be useless. The reason why submarines are powerful lies in the concealment of their attacks. Once discovered, it loses its concealment. Fortunately, maybe the British are not so lucky. When the British armed merchant ship attacked a submarine of the German Navy, it was escaped by the German submarine. After out of danger, the German submarine reported to the country the news that the British used merchant ships to attack the German submarine. Qin Tian and the senior officials of the German Navy suddenly realized. It turned out that the British did not have any advanced weapons, but that they used intrigue. After learning about the British tactics, the problem will be much easier to solve. Your Excellency, the British merchant ships are very precious. However, the lives of our submarines and those officers and soldiers are even more precious. Let the submarine force stop capturing British merchant ships. Any ships that find the Britain will be sunk directly. Qin Tian issued the order. Marshal Earl Tirpitz nodded. He also felt sorry for those elite submarine soldiers. Chapter 380, Fixed Thinking. Your Highness, the British sea transportation line has almost been cut off by our fleet and submarine force. However, a large number of merchant ships from the United States have filled this gap, allowing the British to continue to flow from all kinds of materials they urgently need, are obtained from all over the world. This is a great blow to our tactics of besieging Britain. It almost makes our efforts go to waste. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said to Qin Tian. Qin Tian nodded. This kind of American practice is indeed very unfavorable to Germany. This is tantamount to the Americans using the hands of Britain and France to weaken the power of the German Empire. They hide behind not only can make a lot of war money, but also make their influence in the world more and more. Therefore, Qin Tian has always regarded the United States as Germany's biggest opponent. If Germany wants to secure its position as the world's hegemon, it is inevitable to defeat the United States and remove their threat to the German Empire. Otherwise, the United States will be a big threat to China sooner or later. The United States is a neutral country now, and we can't do anything to them. Before defeating Britain and France, it is very unwise for us to provoke a powerful enemy like the United States. Qin Tian shook his head. Now he also feels very helpless. The strength of the United States is too strong, and he does not want to confront the United States for the time being. Unless Germany wins this war, otherwise, he will try his best to avoid conflict with the United States. Your Highness, I find that you are a little too conservative in dealing with the United States. Although the United States is very strong, we are not afraid of them. Especially when Russia has withdrawn from the war, they treat us. How much of a threat is it? Marshal Earl Tirpitz thought for a while, and then said. Qin Tian was taken aback for a moment. He didn't understand Earl Tirpitz's words. For the United States, it is hard for Qin Tian not to be afraid. The United States of later generations is the world's most powerful country, the world's police. Its military strength dominates the world. Such a powerful country makes all the countries of later generations live in their shadow. Qin Tian, of course, naturally fears the United States. Your Highness, the industrial strength of the United States is very strong, I admit it. However, they are only the world's largest industrial output value. In other words, they have high industrial output value, not strong. In many cutting-edge fields, the empire is more powerful than the United States. Is far ahead. In addition, although the United States is a popular country, their army is small in size, poorly equipped, poorly trained, and not strong in combat effectiveness. Although their navy is second to us and the British, but for the empire, it is not a threat at all. Of course, the United States has strong industrial strength and can build many warships. However, the construction of warships is not so easy and takes a lot of time. Even if the Americans go to war against us, our industrial strength cannot be transformed into war strength in a short period of time. Therefore, we don't need to be afraid of them at all, said Marshal Earl Tirpitz. After hearing the words of Marshal Earl Tirpitz, Qin Tian's eyes suddenly brightened. Indeed, because of the memory of his previous life, he naturally fears the United States. However, what made him frightened was not the present America, but the superpower of later generations. If it is said that the United States and later generations is Uncle Sam who dominates and controls all power, then the present America is nothing but young Sam. Although, they already have a certain amount of capital to grow into a superpower. However, compared with the flourishing Germany, they are still too far behind. Indeed, Your Excellency Marshal, it is I who overestimated the strength of the United States. The geographical location of the United States is very good. The barrier between the two oceans, coupled with the vast land, rich resources, huge population, and developed industries, make them they have the potential to become a superpower. However, this is only potential after all. Now they have not been able to grow into a superpower, and their military strength cannot be compared with the empire. Therefore, the empire does not need to be too afraid of them. After untying this knot in his heart, Qin Tian suddenly had a different idea. He suddenly discovered that the current United States is not invincible. How about this, Marshal? His Majesty will hold an imperial meeting tomorrow. We happen to be at the meeting to discuss this issue. I think everyone should be able to discuss a perfect solution by then, Qin Tian said. Okay, Your Highness. Marshal Earl Tirpitz nodded. After Count Tirpitz left, Qin Tian couldn't help but shook his head with a wry smile. Static thinking kills people. Because of stereotype thinking, I almost missed a good opportunity to end the war as soon as possible. Qin Tian sighed. Originally, he didn't want to break face with the United States now. In this case, the war will inevitably be delayed for a longer period of time, and the German Empire will suffer greater losses in this war, and the Americans can take this opportunity to further weaken Germany's strength. This will be very unfavorable for Germany to defeat the United States and maintain its world dominance in the future. The strength of the United States is indeed very strong. However, the current United States does not have the capital to allow the German Empire to retreat. Of course, once the United States' strong industrial power is transformed into war power, it will be very terrifying. It is very difficult for Germany to defeat such a United States. But it is a pity that Germany in this time and space is much stronger than in another time and space. As a result, the United States in this time and space has no chance of intervening in this war. According to Qin Tian's plan, in the spring of this year, the German army will make a breakthrough on the Western Front, defeat the British and French allied forces, defeat France, and further force Britain to surrender. If Britain does not surrender, it will begin to prepare a combat plan for landing on the British mainland. The Imperial Navy will also defeat the Royal Navy in the first half of this year, preferably before the decisive battle on land, at least severely inflicting damage on them and destroying their main combat power, so that the German Navy can gain control of the sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Native, get ready. If the German army and navy can win victories on these two fronts respectively, then the Americans are nothing to worry about. Even the strong military strength displayed by Germany will make the United States dare not act rashly, thus watching Germany win this war and become the world's hegemon. After Germany has digested the fruits of victory, the United States will not pose too much threat to China. Chapter 381, Confidence to Win. On February 15, 1915, Kaiser Wilhelm II held a routine imperial meeting. Although the cold winter is not over yet, however, preparations for German military operations have already begun. Once spring arrives, a new offensive will begin. Wilhelm II was looking forward to the German army, which had been preparing for a winter, to once again gain an advantage on the Western Front. The German Empire has achieved brilliant victories in the past 6 months. However, the war is not over yet, and there are still powerful enemies waiting for us to conquer. I hope that within this year, there will be a major breakthrough in the battle situation, said William II. Your Majesty, the Navy plans to conduct a decisive battle with the British Navy between March and April this year. Try to completely defeat the British Royal Navy in this decisive battle and gain sea dominance in the Eastern Atlantic Ocean and even the entire Atlantic Ocean. Landing in the British mainland in the future combat, get ready. Marshal Earl Tirpitz, Minister of the Navy, said first. Qin Tian had already communicated with Marshal Count Tirpitz and von Falkenhayn in private. He proposed that the decisive battle of the Navy should precede the decisive battle between the army and the British and French forces on the Western Front. After all, the strength of the British and French coalition forces is now constantly increasing. The French are desperately mobilizing troops, arming French men, and sending them to the front. Whether they are old people or children, they are all included in the mobilization process. Similarly, the British Expeditionary Force continued to transport troops to France. The British also realized that, if the British and French allied forces could not resist the German attack, the consequences would be disastrous, which would directly affect their victory or defeat in this war. Therefore, both Britain and France are desperately trying. If the German Navy can defeat the Royal Navy in a decisive battle, it may be able to enter the English Channel and block it. In this case, Britain will no longer be able to send troops to France. This will make it easier for the army to win on the Western Front. King William II nodded. Tirpitz, the Imperial Navy is ready to defeat the British in one fell swoop. Your Majesty, the Imperial Navy is ready. We have been preparing for this decisive battle for a long time. This time, we will definitely win. Marshal Earl Tirpitz was extremely sure. Well, this couldn't be better. I hope that you can win a brilliant victory. William II undoubtedly had great expectations for the Navy. At the beginning, it was precisely because of his strong support that the German Navy was able to develop rapidly and have the current scale. Please rest assured, Your Majesty, the Imperial Navy will definitely win. Marshal Earl Tirpitz was also full of expectations for the victory. At the same time, he was extremely convinced that he would definitely win. Your Majesty, the various legions of the Imperial Army are almost ready. This time, we have assembled 8 legions on the Western Front. Except for the 8th Legion, the strength of the other 7 legions has been improved to varying degrees. We have added machine guns, grenades, mortars and other weapons, and at the same time, each legion has also formed an armored division. This time, we are confident that we will tear through the defense lines of the British and French allied forces in one fell swoop and take Paris. Von Falkenhayn also said ambitiously. This is a large-scale battle launched after he served as the chief of the general staff. Of course, he hopes that the German army can win a large-scale victory cleanly. In that case, it will also greatly improve his personal prestige. Falkenhayn, is the army really ready this time? I don't want the same situation as last year, William II said. Last year, the German army failed to defeat the British and French allied forces in a short period of time, so that the war continued. This has always made William II dissatisfied. Of course, Malky, the chief of the German General Staff, also paid the price for this. Your Majesty, please rest assured that the Imperial Army will definitely win this time. Von Falkenhayn was also full of confidence. This time the German army assembled 8 legions on the Western Front, with a total strength of 1.7 million. Among them, there are 8 armored divisions and more than 2,000 tanks. There are more than 10,000 guns of various calibers. The number of machine guns is even more numerous. Although, the British and French allied forces already have the upper hand in terms of strength. However, von Falkenhayn still believed that they would win this time. Among other things, the 8th Armored Division has already proved the powerful assault capability of the armored forces on the Eastern Front. Although the entire Western Front has become a trench warfare. However, the tracks of the tank must be able to easily crush the enemy's defense line composed of barbed wire and machine gun fortresses. Very well. When is the army ready to attack? William II asked. Your Majesty, the army plans to launch an attack in mid-April this year. By then, the Navy has already won. If it goes well, the Navy may have entered the English Channel and controlled it. In that case, the supply and replenishment of the British and French coalition forces will be being cut off will be more conducive to our defeat of the British and French forces. Von Falkenhayn said. William II nodded again and again, and he also believed that this was the safest tactic. Let the Navy lead the way. After the Navy wins, supplies can weaken the strength of the British and French coalition forces, and at the same time, can further suppress their morale. These are a great help to defeat the British and French allied forces and win the victory. It seems that the Imperial Army and Navy are fully prepared this time. May God bless the German Empire and win the final victory of this war. William II said. God bless the German Empire. Everyone said. Everyone's eyes were full of enthusiasm. As if the winning ticket is really in hand. Everyone, if our 2 military operations are successful, will the British surrender to us? William II asked suddenly. Although King George V is his cousin. However, William II was more than happy to defeat his cousin himself. Your Majesty, if the Britain chooses to surrender, it will be a good thing for the Empire, and we can reduce casualties. However, if the British refuse to surrender, then the Imperial Army will land on the British Isles and let the British knowing that it would be a very stupid thing to reject the goodwill of the Empire. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said with a smile. William II nodded, very satisfied with the answer of Marshal Earl Tirpitz. Chapter 382, warn the United States. Father, the current situation is very beneficial to the Empire. However, there are despicable and shameless villains who are attacking the Empire. Qin Tian said to William II. Oh, Oscar, what's going on? William II couldn't help but frowned. Although Germany has not yet won the war, this does not prevent William II from calling himself the sovereign of the world. He absolutely cannot accept that kind of behavior that provokes Germany. Father, the Americans have always supported the British and the French under the cloak of strict neutrality. The support for the British in particular has reached an outrageous level. According to the information we have obtained, the Americans are a large number of merchant ships are used to transport various resources to the UK, including weapons and ammunition. This has undoubtedly violated the law of neutrality. The Americans do this for nothing more than 2 purposes. The first purpose is to start a war, take advantage of this opportunity to plunder the wealth of Britain. Another purpose, I'm afraid, is to use the hands of Britain and France to weaken our strength. If Britain and France can persist in this war for a long time, it will be for the Empire. In other words, it is undoubtedly more unfavorable, because this will make the Empire pay more casualties in the war. At that time, the Americans can reap the benefits. Don't forget, the United States is the world's largest industrial power. The status of world hegemony is also coveted. At the beginning of this century, they have already put forward the slogan that America is the America of Americans. It can be seen that their ambitions, if the strength of the United States further increases, no one can guarantee will they come up with the slogan that the world belongs to Americans. Qin Tian said. After hearing Qin Tian's words, King William II's face immediately became ugly. William II was not unaware that the Americans were secretly violating the neutrality law and transporting weapons and other war materials to Britain. However, because Germany's situation was not very good before, and they didn't want to offend a powerful country like the United States at that juncture, they could only turn a blind eye and close one eye. But now, the situation seems to be different. After solving the troubles on the Eastern Front, Germany seems to have no need to continue to endure. The Americans are indeed provoking the empire by doing this. We can't let them continue to behave like this. In that case, many young men from the empire will lose their lives on the battlefield. Our blockade of Britain was originally it has worked. However, the Americans have made our blockade useless. This is absolutely unacceptable to the German Empire. Wilhelm II said. Yes, Your Majesty. Everyone replied. It's just, Your Majesty. What should we do? If we take a tough attitude, will the United States be forced to the side of the Allies? Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wachter was a little worried. The reason why the Americans dared to unscrupulously transport weapons and equipment to Britain and France was not because of their strength. Whether it was the Allies or the Allies, they dared not offend them easily, but could only win them over. But now, Germany seems to have the strength to stop worrying about the Americans. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, don't worry. The United States is indeed one of the world's most powerful countries. But unfortunately, although the United States' industrial strength is strong, their military strength is very weak. Even if they start to expand their armaments, it will not be for a while. It can be done in a while. When they expand their military strength, we have already won the victory in the European battlefield. At that time, will the Americans still have the courage to continue to confront us? I personally have serious doubts about this. Yes, Qin Tian said. Well, what Oscar said is right. As long as the Imperial Navy and the Imperial Army win the next 2 decisive battles, then the Americans will not dare to do anything to us. Even if they are allowed to participate in the war, they will not have that courage. William II looked contemptuous. For William II, a powerful empire is undoubtedly his confidence. The strong strength of the German Empire made him not care whether the Americans would hold resentment at all. Your Majesty, the behavior of the Americans is indeed very detrimental to the empire. However, if the United States is involved in the war, it will make the empire spend more energy and pay a higher price to win the war. Therefore, it is undoubtedly the best thing not to force the United States into the camp of the Allied powers. Prime Minister Bernhard von Gillow said. If the Americans are sensible and stop transporting weapons and other war materials to the UK, that would be the best. Otherwise, they will be responsible for their actions. William II's attitude seemed very tough. Let the foreign ministries warn the Americans first. If the Americans can stop this, then we can let the past go. Otherwise, we have to take relative measures. We need to let the Americans see that the German Reich is not soft. Persimmons are not something they can provoke. Even if the empire goes to war with other great powers at the same time, they are not afraid of them. Qin Tian said. Let's do it according to Oscar's opinion. I hope this time, the Americans can understand each other. William II said. Yes, Your Majesty. Prime Minister Bernhard von Gillow and Minister of Foreign Affairs von Kidron-Wachter nodded repeatedly. With William II and Qin Tian having made up their minds, they could only follow the orders. Immediately after the imperial meeting ended, the Imperial Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wachter sent a telegram to the Imperial Embassy in the United States, requesting that the Imperial Ambassador to the United States protest to the United States, and warn them not to send any further inquiries to the British Embassy. Transport weapons and other combat supplies. Glass, the Imperial Ambassador to the United States, immediately sent someone to meet with the US Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan regardless of whether it was still morning in the United States. When William Jennings Bryan entered the office, he found that Ambassador Glass was already waiting there. This made him feel tense, feeling that something bad was about to happen. With the turmoil in Russia, withdraw from the war. Germany's advantage in this war has also become more and more obvious, which has also caused fierce debates in the US cabinet. Some cabinet ministers believed that it would be quite unwise for the United States to continue to support Britain and France, and it would offend Germany to the death. However, President Woodrow Wilson still failed to change his attitude. Chapter 383, Difficult Choices. Good morning, Ambassador. William Jennings Bryan had a smile on his face. Although, the United States also hopes to become a world hegemon one day. However, judging from the current situation, the United States is still a long way from being a world hegemon, and the German Empire seems to be only one step away from the world hegemony. Therefore, even if he was only facing an ambassador of the German Empire, Secretary Bryan did not dare to put on airs. Hello, Your Excellency Secretary of State. Sorry to disturb you so early in the morning, Ambassador Glass said coldly. Although he said sorry, however, there was no apology on his face. Your Excellency, it's all for official business. I can understand. I don't know if Your Excellency is meeting me this time. What's the matter? Bryan asked. The attitude of Ambassador Glass made him even more worried. The other party seemed to be a bad visitor. Your Excellency, Secretary of State, on behalf of the German Empire, I express my protest to your country. Your country's violation of the law of neutrality by transporting weapons, equipment, and war supplies to Britain and France has caused serious damage to the interests of the German Empire. The Empire absolutely it cannot be tolerated that this situation will continue to happen. Therefore, the Empire requires the United States to stop transporting weapons, equipment, and combat supplies to Britain and France from now on, so as not to damage the relationship between our two countries. Ambassador Glass said. Secretary of State Bryan's complexion suddenly turned a little ugly. As the Secretary of State, the United States transported supplies to the Allies, so he naturally knew it clearly. What's more, that was a strategy formulated by the US cabinet, using the hands of Britain, France and other countries to weaken Germany's power and prepare for the future competition between the United States and Germany for world hegemony. It's just that the Germans have always turned a blind eye to this before. Unexpectedly, now the Germans have directly disclosed this point. Obviously, after winning the Eastern Front, Germany began to inflate its self-confidence, and it no longer feared that the United States would fall to the side of the Allies. Damn it, it seems that the balance has been broken. The Germans thought they had won the victory, and they didn't pay attention to us at all. Secretary of State Bryan thought about it all at once. However, this is obviously not good news for the United States. Your Excellency, I think there must be some misunderstanding. The United States has always been strictly neutral. We have never done anything that violates the neutrality law. Bryan denied Ambassador Glass's accusation. Such a thing, of course, cannot be admitted. Once admitted, this will not only have a great impact on the reputation of the United States, but will also make the relationship between the United States and Germany immediately hostile. Although, the Americans have been trying to find ways to stumbling Germany. But if they are asked to stand uprightly and confront Germany, they dare not. At least, now they dare not. They are not ready yet, Your Excellency. If it is a misunderstanding, it would be the best. However, the German Empire will never tolerate the misunderstanding becoming reality. We will take corresponding measures. But if it is proved that it is not a misunderstanding, but a reality, if not, then everyone's face will look ugly. Glass reminded. Your Excellency, please rest assured that the United States will strictly abide by the law of neutrality. We have always regarded Germany as our friend, and we will never damage the relationship between the two countries. Secretary of State Bryan said. After the two of them said some polite words without any nutrition, Ambassador Glass left. When the door of the office was closed, Secretary Bryan's expression suddenly became very ugly. Damn the Germans, don't they think they have won the war and become the world's hegemony? Secretary of State Bryan cursed. After venting his anger, Bryan called his secretary to come in. Pack up and prepare the car. I'm going to the White House. At the same time, inform the other cabinet ministers who are still in Washington to go to the White House. Bryan ordered. Yes, Your Excellency Secretary of State. The secretary nodded and immediately went out to make arrangements. 10 minutes later, Secretary of State Bryan got into the car and headed to the White House. At the same time, other cabinet ministers also rushed to the White House by car. They all knew that something important had happened. Half an hour later, US President Woodrow Wilson, Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan, and a group of cabinet ministers all gathered in the White House conference room. Cigars were smoked one by one, and the meeting room soon became smoky. Secretary of State, what happened? President Woodrow Wilson asked, and he still hadn't figured out what happened. Your Excellency, ministers, the Germans already know about our secret support for Britain and France. Bryan said. Didn't they know about this a long time ago? Vice President Marshall was a little surprised. It can be said that with the capabilities of German intelligence agencies, it is almost impossible for the United States to completely conceal it. Woodling? President Wilson frowned. Yes, the Germans did know about it a long time ago. However, they have always pretended not to know before. But the problem now is that the German ambassador to the United States has officially warned us and asked us not to report to the Allies. We have provided weapons, equipment, and war materials. Otherwise, they will take action. It can be seen that the attitude of the Germans has undergone a fundamental change. Bryan said. What? The Germans dare to warn us? Don't they know that what they do is very likely to force us into the Allied powers? In that case, it will not be of any benefit to them. Treasury Secretary McAdoo exclaimed. You know, the war broke out only half a year ago, but the United States has further accelerated its economic development because of selling various war materials to the Allied powers. If it is affected by this, it will have a serious adverse effect on the US economy. Everyone, it seems that we have to face a difficult choice again this time. The Germans have already shown us their cards, and they don't want us to engage in small tricks in private. So, what should we do? Woodrow Wilson sighed. If possible, he certainly hoped that the war could continue as long as possible. In this case, the United States will be able to reap enough benefits from it. After the old continent is completely smashed, the United States will be able to seize the opportunity to seize the leadership of the world. Chapter 384. Tough attitude. Gentlemen, as far as the Germans are concerned, if we continue to support the British and the French, the Germans will definitely be dissatisfied with us. This may directly lead to a breakdown in the relationship between our two countries. Secretary of State Bryan said. Do the Germans still dare to use force against us? Even if their military strength far exceeds ours. However, the Atlantic Ocean is our safest barrier. It is impossible for the Germans to hit our east coast. Woodrow Wilson said. The president. Indeed, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, as two natural barriers, have greatly guaranteed the security of the United States. In addition, there are no big countries around the United States, which makes it easy for them to dominate the Americas behind closed doors. Even if Germany is very strong, it is absolutely impossible to conquer the United States. The transportation lines on the thousands of kilometers of ocean alone are enough to cause headaches for the Germans. The US cabinet ministers present nodded their heads one after another. This is undoubtedly the advantage of the United States. Your Excellency, the Germans may not be able to threaten our homeland. But what if they attack our merchant ships? Then what should we do? Secretary of the Navy Daniels was a little worried. The strength of the US Navy, although second only to Germany and the United Kingdom, belongs to the third place in the world. However, compared with the previous two naval powers, their gap is still very large. Although, under the influence of the German Navy, the United States has also strengthened its naval construction. However, the construction of the Navy has never been something that can be done in a short period of time, and it takes time to accumulate slowly. If Germany did attack US merchant shipping, the US Navy simply couldn't do anything about it. They didn't even have the guts to take on the German Navy in the Atlantic. Because that means that there is no doubt that they will lose. At least, Daniels, the Secretary of the Navy of the United States, has no confidence. Will the Germans attack our merchant ships? We are a neutral country. If they do that, they will be condemned by the whole world, and they will even force us into the arms of the Allies. As long as the Germans are not fools, they will certainly not be so do it, exclaimed Vice President Marshall. After all, attacking a merchant ship of a neutral country is something that can only be done after the extreme madness. In order to win, the Germans can do anything. Minister Daniels said. Are the Germans really sure of winning this war? Britain and France are the world's top powers, so they shouldn't be so careless. President Woodrow Wilson seemed a little unwilling to accept this result. Your Excellency, the Germans have indeed gained a great advantage in this war, especially in the case of civil strife in Russia and withdrawal from the war. The Germans can already withdraw from the Eastern Front. This allows them to mobilize the main force to attack the West and fight the British and French allied forces. As for the battlefield in southern Europe, it was completely taken over by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The strength of the Kingdom of Italy is too bad, so even if they joined the allied powers, they did not play much at all role. This war has almost completely evolved into a contest between Germany and Britain and France. Judging from the current situation, Germany has an absolute upper hand in this contest. The military strength they have shown makes all people are in shock, Secretary of War Garrison said. Indeed, Germany's military strength in this war shocked everyone. It is well known that the German army is #1 in the world. However, before the outbreak of the war, no one would think that the German army had the strength to win in the two-front battle. However, the result was an eye-opener for everyone. The German army really gained an advantage on both the eastern and western fronts, especially on the eastern front, with an army of less than 200,000 people. With the cooperation of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it actually defeated 2 million Russian troops, which directly led to the collapse of Russia. Such strength cannot be compared with other countries. As for the German Navy, it is even more experienced. Germany vigorously develops its navy and catches up with the British Royal Navy, which is known to all countries. For this reason, the whole world has entered a naval arms race. However, almost all countries believe that the German Navy is the one catching up. However, after the outbreak of the war, the German Navy completely suppressed the British Navy. The performance of the British Navy is very bad, as if the German Navy is the sea supremacy. Whether it is the Navy or the Army, Germany has an advantage. This undoubtedly makes them very likely to win in future wars. Although, the war is still going on, unless some miracle happens. Otherwise, it is estimated that no one can stop Germany from winning. Even the United States can't do it. Even if the United States joins the war now, I'm afraid it won't be able to threaten Germany. At most it can contain part of Germany's power. The Americans are not fools, and naturally they will not be involved in the war at this time. Even if they want to join the war, they will choose the winner's camp instead of being a loser. Everyone, what do you mean? Are we going to follow the advice of the Germans and stop supporting the Allies? President Woodrow Wilson asked. Most of the cabinet ministers nodded repeatedly. After all, it would be very uneconomical to fight against the victor. What's more, if we continue to provide support to the Allies now, how will they recover these investments once the Allies are defeated? Everyone, my thoughts are different from yours. First of all, regardless of whether we continue to support the Allied powers, Germany poses no threat to our homeland. President Woodrow Wilson said, looking at everyone. The cabinet ministers nodded one after another. Secondly, if Germany wins the war, their strength will increase explosively. At that time, even if we want to hold the Americas, it will be very difficult. Therefore, we must use this war to further weaken the power of the Germans. Only in this way can we maintain an evenly matched situation and even gain an advantage in the future competition with the Germans. We have not directly participated in this war. Therefore, even if the Germans are against the Germans, we are dissatisfied, and we can't do anything to us. I think this is an excellent opportunity. If you miss it, you will never have such an opportunity in the future, Woodrow Wilson said. Although other cabinet ministers think that the president is a bit too risky, they know that President Wilson is indeed for the interests of the United States. So, replied to the Germans, we did not transport weapons and equipment to the Allies. As a neutral country, the United States of America has the right to trade with any country. President Woodrow Wilson said. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385, Countermeasures. Germany, Berlin, Foreign Office. Imperial Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wachter is in a very good mood recently. He is optimistic that the war is likely to end this year. Even if the progress is a little slower, it will definitely end next year. At that time, as the foreign minister of the empire, he will be very busy. He will represent the empire, negotiate with those defeated countries, and slaughter them well. Every time I think of these things, von Kidron-Wachter gets very excited. Your Excellency, this is a telegram from the embassy in the United States. The secretary put a newly translated telegram on von Kidron-Wachter's desk. Von Kidron-Wachter picked up the telegram and looked at it, but soon his expression became unsightly. Shameless Americans, they don't dare to admit it. At this time, do they still want to deny it? Besides, their attitude is still very tough. Could it be that they still want to make an enemy of the empire at this juncture? Von Kidron-Wachter said coldly. According to von Kidron-Wachter, it is undoubtedly very unwise for Americans to do so. After all, anyone with a discerning eye can see that Germany's victory in the war is almost a certainty. The Americans chose to offend the German Empire simply because their brains were kicked by a donkey. Prepare the car, go to the palace immediately, and report to His Majesty. In addition, inform His Excellency the Prime Minister, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, His Excellency the Minister of the Navy and the Minister of the Army. Von Kidron-Wachter ordered. The Americans chose to be the enemy of the empire, which is undoubtedly a big event for the whole of Germany. Especially now that the war is not over yet. Although Germany has an advantage, it has not really won the final victory after all. If the United States joins in and joins the war on the side of the Allied powers, it may cause another significant change in the balance of strength between the two sides. This is undoubtedly not a good thing for the German Empire. 20 minutes later, a group of senior officials from the German government and military gathered in the office of Wilhelm II. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, is the attitude of the Americans really tough? William II asked. In his thinking, he also believed that the Americans should stop supporting the Allies. In that case, all problems will undoubtedly be solved. However, it is a pity that the choice of the Americans once again exceeded everyone's expectations. Yes, Your Majesty, the Americans claim that they have not violated the law of neutrality. At the same time, they also claim that they have the right to trade with any country, and other countries have no right to make irresponsible remarks on their trade. Von Kidron-Wachter said. Arsehole. The Americans are deliberately provoking the empire. Everyone knows what they transported to the Allied powers. They have the courage to do it, but they don't have the courage to admit it. It is really shameless. William II was furious. Your Majesty, the Americans have made it clear that they are going to be enemies of the empire. Then we don't care so much and attack their merchant ships directly. If we can prevent the Americans from transporting supplies to the Allied powers, we will defeat Britain and France. The possibility will be further improved. This will be very beneficial for us to win the next war. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said. The current Imperial Navy is full of confidence. With a large number of cutting-edge warships in service, the German Navy has become a well-deserved number one in the world. Especially when the British Royal Navy was also attacked by the German Navy, it suffered heavy losses, which further strengthened the confidence of the Imperial Navy. Marshal Earl Tirpitz is even confident that, even if the US Navy joins in, the German Navy will have enough strength to deal with it, attacking American merchant ships. This is not very good. I'm afraid it will directly force the Americans to the side of the Allies. In this case, it will be very detrimental to the empire. Besides, attacking merchant ships will affect the international image of the empire. It will have a very adverse impact. Prime Minister Billow raised objections. Your Majesty, even if the United States joins the Allied powers, it will not be able to change the outcome of the war. Our army and navy will soon launch large-scale attacks. At that time, once we win on these two fronts, we will be far from the final battle. Victory is not far away. Even if the Americans join the war, it is impossible to send troops to Europe in a short time. Therefore, we do not need to be afraid of them at all. Minister of War and Chief of the General Staff von Falkenhayn also said. King William II nodded. The war has been fought like this, and the dawn of victory has undoubtedly appeared. Therefore, Germany does not have to be as timid as before. However, he still didn't make a decision right away. Oscar, what do you think? William II asked. Although Qin Tian is still young, William II has long stopped treating Qin Tian as a child. He often attached great importance to Qin Tian's many suggestions. Among the countless previous examples, it has undoubtedly been proved that Qin Tian has amazing foresight on many issues. Further, what the Americans do is indeed very detrimental to the empire. Now it is almost certain that the Americans want to use the British and the French to weaken our strength. Therefore, they will maintain tough attitude. Naturally, the empire cannot turn a blind eye to the actions of the Americans. Otherwise, it will not only damage the interests of the empire, but also increase the losses of the empire in this war. For the empire to maintain its future world dominance, it will be very unfavorable. Therefore, I think we must not back down this time. We must adopt a tough attitude to respond to the Americans. Qin Tian said. King William II pondered for a few seconds and then said, if the United States takes the opportunity to join the war and join the Allied powers, it won't have a big impact on the future war situation, right? What William II was most worried about was undoubtedly the victory that was about to be achieved, but failed due to those reasons. In that case, it would be too cost effective. Rather than that, William II would rather ensure that the empire wins future wars, even if it pays more losses. Winning is the most important thing. Further, even if the Americans join the war, it will have no impact on the overall situation. It will be inevitable for us to defeat Britain and France. The Americans will not be able to save them. Of course, at this stage, we have nothing to do with the United States threat. However, as long as we occupy the entire European continent and integrate the strength of the entire Europe, we will definitely be able to defeat the United States, Qin Tian said confidently. Chapter 386, No-Fly Zone. Your Majesty, is the Empire going to launch an attack on those merchant ships of the Americans? As long as His Majesty gives the order, we can leave and start operations, Marshal Earl Tirpitz said excitedly. You know, whether it is the Imperial Navy's breaking fleet or the submarine force, those American merchant ships in the Atlantic Ocean are all coveted. In particular, these American merchant ships transported to Britain were almost all war supplies. This obviously caused great damage to the interests of the German Empire. The officers and soldiers of the Imperial Navy have long wanted to deal with these American merchant ships. However, because of the international situation, the Imperial Navy has never dared to act rashly. But now, the time has come. The Empire no longer has to worry about the Americans. Then, the Imperial Navy will naturally not have to endure it anymore. No, directly attacking American merchant ships is an extreme way. This will have a certain impact on the reputation of the Empire. Even if the Empire doesn't care about these reputations, there is still no need to make excuses. William II has not yet what to say. Qin Tian opened his mouth. Oscar, is there any way you can teach these Americans a lesson? William II asked. Your Majesty, I suggest that the Empire declare a no navigation zone in the western and southern waters of the British Isles. Ships from other countries are prohibited from entering that sea area. If they need to enter, they must apply to Germany. Otherwise, will be regarded as an enemy of Germany. The German Navy can sink any ship that has not been reported to the Empire. In addition, ships from any country are prohibited from transporting war materials to Britain and France. The specific types of war materials are listed by the Ministry of the Navy come out. The warships of the Imperial Navy will be inspected in the Atlantic Ocean. Once any ships are found that violate the German order, they can be impounded. If they encounter resistance, they can be sunk directly, Qin Tian said. Everyone was shocked, and they couldn't help thinking that Qin Tian's words were too arrogant. This is simply to use the power of Germany as a country to face other countries. Of course, they all believed that doing so would be very beneficial to Germany. Your Highness, isn't our attitude a little too arrogant? If this is the case, I'm afraid it will cause strong opposition from other countries, Prime Minister Bismarck said. If you oppose it, just oppose it. It has nothing to do with it. It will not cause any loss to the Empire. As long as we can win this war and become the hegemon of the world, then everything is worth it, Qin Tian said. Your Highness, we are obviously deliberately targeting the Americans by doing this. Will this arouse the dissatisfaction of the Americans and directly start a war with us? Von Kidron-Wachter also said. They don't have the guts. Of course, this may bring the relationship between us and the United States to a freezing point. However, I don't think it has any relationship. Anyway, after we win this war, we will also have relations with the United States. The Americans are heading for confrontation. We need to win this war with the least cost, so that we can gain an advantage in the future confrontation with the United States. Qin Tian said. No sailing zone. This name is very good. Since the Americans want to transport supplies to Britain and France, they will cheat the empire directly prohibits their ships from going to these two countries. All war supplies are prohibited from entering these two countries. The country. Only in this way can the empire win the war. Very good, let's do it like this. William II finally made a decision. On February 18, 1915, the German government officially issued a notice. In view of the fact that the British coast has become a warring area, in order to avoid fratricide, a no-fly zone was delineated along the British coast. Vessels from any country shall not appear in the no navigation zone. Once you break in, you will bear the consequences. In addition, any country is prohibited from transporting food, oil, steel, aluminum ingots and other non-ferrous metals, as well as weapons and ammunition to Britain and France. Once discovered, it will be regarded as an enemy of Germany. Germany will take all means to defend the interests of the German Empire. The announcement made by the German government immediately caused an uproar all over the world. Britain and France, Germany's hostile countries, have accused Germany of making such an arrogant announcement, believing that Germany has no right to do so at all. You know, even when the British Empire was at its strongest, they were never so arrogant. What's more, Germany did this to target these two countries and wanted to completely cut off their overseas trade, directly trapping them to death. Especially the United Kingdom. Once overseas trade is completely cut off, they are really not far from death. Of course they would strongly object. It's just that the German Empire never cared about their opposition. The US government was also furious with Germany's tit-for-tat response. They knew that this was Germany's answer to their earlier reply. The Germans did this entirely to prohibit the United States from transporting supplies to Britain and France. Germany has taken a tough attitude, which naturally caused some people in the US cabinet to shake their positions. They are undoubtedly afraid that, if they do so, it will lead to the involvement of the United States in the war. Although, senior officials of the US government all want to replace Britain and become the future world hegemon. However, they may have to think twice if it costs them to participate in the war. However, under the strong promotion of President Woodrow Wilson, the US government was still not intimidated by the Germans. The US publicly government issued a statement that the German government's outrageous and unreasonable actions are blatantly undermining free trade and trampling on freedom and human rights. The United States will never abide by the so-called no-fly zone designated by Germany. The United States has the right to trade with any country, and other countries have no right to interfere. At the same time, the US government also stated that the US has sufficient military strength to safeguard their interests. If their interests are damaged, the United States will take all measures and means to protect their interests, including war. The response of the US government undoubtedly made the international situation more complicated and confusing. Many countries are not fools, so they naturally understand why the United States and Germany are confronting each other. However, they are also speculating whether the United States will be involved in the war because of this. Germany's designation of no-flight zones has also somewhat affected other countries. However, due to the strong strength of Germany, they dare not speak out and can only wait to see the reactions of other countries before deciding what to do next. Chapter 387. Ecstatic British. Gentlemen, God bless the British Empire. The Germans are so arrogant that they have made a foolish move now. Could it be that they really think that their military strength is strong enough to be an enemy of the whole world at the same time? Prime Minister Asquith, with a smile on his face. It was as if the great pressure of the previous period had disappeared all of a sudden. With Germany increasingly gaining an advantage in the war, Britain is under increasing pressure. In order to send more expeditionary forces to the European continent, the mobilization of the British mainland is also increasing. Many young men were forced to serve in the military. This makes the strength of the expeditionary force constantly rising. Of course, the defense of the British mainland has also begun to be strengthened. The British government is still worried that, if the British and French allied forces fail to withstand the German attack in France, then a large number of troops will be needed to defend the mainland. In this way, they will be able to continue to persevere in the war. Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister, God must be protecting the British Empire. Sir Edward Grey, the Foreign Secretary, also said, the current occupation has become very unfavorable to Britain. However, if the United States can join the Allied powers to fight, this will undoubtedly bring about a new change in Britain's difficult situation, and even winning the war is not impossible. Just as the German army believed that they would definitely win the next two crucial battles, the British government also believed that their army would be able to withstand the German attack. In this case, although the situation is very unfavorable to them, they also have a great chance of winning. Gentlemen, do you think that the Americans will be provoked by the Germans and join the war? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Your Excellency, this may be very difficult. Although the United States and the Germans are now at war, it is undoubtedly difficult to say whether the Americans have the confidence to join the war. The Germans have shown in this war their military strength is really too strong. Americans have never been good at fighting. Their industrial strength is very strong, but their military strength is not strong. It will also take a long time for industrial strength to be transformed into military strength. Therefore, the United States maybe people will compromise this time. Churchill was not as optimistic as Prime Minister Asquith. Mr. Churchill, you are too negative. The military strength of the Americans is indeed not strong. However, if they are given enough time, their industrial strength can definitely be transformed into military strength. As long as we can resist the Germans' attack, and when the military strength of the United States explodes, we will be able to win. Prime Minister Asquith said. Although, these senior officials of the British cabinet all look down on upstarts like the United States. But the ridiculous thing is, that now the United States has become their life-saving straw. They all hope that the United States can join the Allied powers at this time, to help them win the war. Obviously, they no longer have the confidence to win this war on their own. Your Excellency, this is exactly the case, so we have to be more careful about the Germans. In order to prevent the United States from joining the war, which will have an impact on the war situation, the Germans will definitely launch an attack in a short time and try to defeat us. In this case, even if the United States joining the war will not pose much threat to them, Churchill was still a little worried. The Germans will launch an attack this spring. Isn't this what we have long concluded? At the same time, we have been preparing for the German attack. The expeditionary force we have sent to France has reached as many as 500,000. Yes, the mainland has an army of 500,000. And our French allies, their army has expanded to 2.5 million. Just to deal with the German troops in the north, there are as many as 2 million people. The Anglo-French coalition forces with a total of 2.5 million people will certainly be able to withstand the German attack. And the Royal Navy, after the Queen Elizabeth-class battleships and the Revenge-class battleships have successively served, their strength has also improved a lot. Perhaps, still unable to compete head-on with the Germans. However, it is still no problem to persist until the United States completes its armed forces. So, if the United States can join the war, the outcome of this war will be rewritten. The British Empire will win the war in history. The most powerful enemy win the final victory of the war. Richard Haldane, the Minister of War, seemed very confident. Then, the most critical question now is how the Americans will join the war. Can we contribute to it? Prime Minister Asquith said. Your Excellency, this is actually very simple. Didn't the Germans want to ban all ships from arriving in the UK and prohibit other countries from transporting supplies to us? We can just take this opportunity to place more orders with the United States so that American merchant ships will the supplies are brought to us. For the sake of profit, those American merchant ships will definitely enter the no-sail zone designated by the Germans forcibly. At that time, once an American merchant ship is seized or sunk, what will the US government do? One can imagine the reaction. I think that, if the price paid by the United States is high enough, then the possibility of them going to war with Germany will undoubtedly be very high. Chancellor of the Exchequer Lloyd George said, "Well, let's do this. Give the Americans as many orders as possible, so that American industry and commerce will go crazy. Only in this way, they will ignore the warnings of the Germans." Prime Minister Asquith said, "Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister." Everyone replied, "Your Excellency, Prime Minister, if we can borrow more money from the United States. In this way, as long as the Americans don't want those loans to be paid back, they can only support us. This will make us and the United States share common interests." Sir Edward Grey, Foreign Secretary, also said, "Very well, Your Excellency will handle this matter." Prime Minister Asquith nodded. "Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister." Sir Edward Grey said hastily, "Gentlemen, the current situation is developing in our favor. Maybe, the tide of battle will be reversed soon. Therefore, we must seize this opportunity to win this great battle that concerns the survival of the British Empire. Whether the British Empire can survive for a long time depends on this battle." Prime Minister Asquith said, "The British Empire will win." All the British cabinet ministers shouted. They are full of desire for victory, but also full of confidence. Chapter 388, check. Your Highness, the western seas of England are too vast. It is almost impossible for us to completely form a tight blockade in this sea area. Especially at night, the sight is affected, which is not conducive to our blockade. Imperial Navy Minister Marshal Earl Tirpitz said to Qin Tian. Qin Tian nodded. There is no radar in this era. When warships search for sea targets, they can only rely more on sight. A battleship can monitor the sea area with a radius of tens of kilometers at most. To ensure that the no navigation zone is not in name only, this requires the German Navy to invest a lot of power. Otherwise, no-fly zones would be useless. What about the High Seas Fleet's opinion? Qin Tian asked. The opinion of the High Seas Fleet is that the break-off fleet is the main one, and then a large number of destroyers and light cruisers are dispatched to monitor that sea area. The destroyers and light cruisers are fast and can search large areas of the sea. Those battleships of the break-off fleet cruisers are used to deal with enemy warships. If the Americans are not so bold as to dispatch warships, destroyers, and light cruisers are enough to deal with all problems. Of course, we also need to guard against the British. Their Queen Elizabeth the Revenge-class battleships and the Revenge-class battleships are both powerful battleships equipped with 381mm main guns, and they pose a great threat to our breaching fleet. Marshal Count Tirpitz said, "Let's do it according to the opinions of the High Seas Fleet. However, remind the submarine force that they only need to provide information to the breaking fleet, and there is no need to intercept those merchant ships." Qin Tian said, "Last time, the trap set by the British against German submarines caused them heavy losses. Qin Tian didn't want such an accident to happen again. The submarine force is undoubtedly very precious, and Qin Tian absolutely does not allow it to be wasted on these aspects. Although, the major shipyards in Germany have received orders from the Ministry of the Navy and have begun to build more submarines. However, those submarine soldiers are undoubtedly the most precious. Especially experienced submariners who have participated in actual combat are precious assets. Qin Tian didn't want these precious treasures to be lost like this." "Yes, Your Highness." Marshal Earl Tirpitz nodded. The German Navy's breaking fleet originally had 9 battle cruisers. After the Mackensen-class battle cruisers entered service, they were also strengthened to the breaching fleet, so that the number of battle cruisers owned by the breaching fleet reached 12. Among them, 6 are powerful battleships equipped with 380mm main guns. The strength of the German Navy's breakthrough fleet alone is estimated to be second only to Britain and Germany. Even the US Navy must concentrate its main force in order to be able to confront it. It can be seen that the German Navy is strong. In addition to these battle cruisers, the breakthrough fleet also has a group of cruisers and destroyers. The total number of warships has reached more than 50. Although there are a lot of them, it is undoubtedly very difficult to completely block the western waters of Britain. Therefore, the High Seas Fleet deployed more than 20 light cruisers and destroyers to strengthen the destroyer fleet. Make sure that after the no-sail zone is established, it is not empty, but it can really intercept merchant ships from other countries going to Britain, France and other countries. In particular, US merchant ships will be their key targets for interception. For other countries, Qin Tian did not believe that they really had the guts to confront the German Empire. Lieutenant General Maximilian von Spee was appointed as the commander in charge of intercepting merchant ships from various countries in the no-sail zone. Lieutenant General Franz von Hipper was transferred back to the High Seas Fleet headquarters. After all, the decisive battle between the German Navy and the British Navy is about to begin. Admiral Reinhard Scheer is also very busy. Lieutenant General Hipper, as the assistant of Admiral Reinhard Scheer, formulated various combat plans to ensure that the German Navy can win this decisive battle. A large number of German warships gathered in the western waters of the United Kingdom, forming an impenetrable blockade. It is impossible for ships from other countries to enter the United Kingdom. However, the British were not intimidated by the no-fly zone set by the German army. The British government placed a large number of orders to the United States, from food to oil, to minerals, weapons, and equipment, etc., which made the American industry begin to develop rapidly. At the same time, the British government also hired American merchant ships to transport these materials. Although many American merchant ship owners were frightened by the no-sail zone set by Germany, they dared not take any more risks. But there are still many people who would risk their lives for money, not to mention just breaking into the no-fly zone designated by the Germans. Besides, they are all Americans, and the United States is a neutral country. These merchant ship owners are not worried about what the Germans will do to them. In other words, what did the Germans dare to do to them? Big deal. After being intercepted by the Germans, it turned around and returned. In that case, it's just a loss of some gas money. For these merchant ship owners, the gas money is nothing at all. If you can break out a safe route, that is a way of making money. The Statue of Liberty is a large cruise ship. If the entire cruise ship is fully loaded, it can carry 12,000 tons of crude oil. After the war broke out, Britain's consumption of oil began to soar. Although Britain has oil fields in the Middle East, many warships of the Royal Navy have been replaced with oil-fired boilers, which makes Britain consume a lot of oil. The largest oil-producing country in the world is undoubtedly the United States. American oil has also become the key oil imported by the United Kingdom. Almost all tankers plying the Atlantic are American tankers. It's just that after Germany delineated a no-sail zone, there are not many tankers who dare to continue to transport oil to the UK. Captain, tomorrow we will enter the no-sail zone designated by the Germans. What should we do if we are intercepted by the Germans? A sailor asked. Stupid. We are all Americans. What can the Germans do to us? The boss has already said that if our tanker of oil can be safely sent to England, everyone will get an extra bonus. The captain had a smile on his face. Don't worry, God will bless us. The Germans will not find us. Even if they find us, we will return at most. We will be very safe. The captain looked confident. It's just that this is too absolute. The next day, the oil tanker Statue of Liberty sailed into the no-sail zone designated by Germany. However, in less than 2 hours, they were discovered by a destroyer of the German Navy. Stop the ship and accept inspection. The German destroyer immediately notified the oil tanker Statue of Liberty by radio. Chapter 389, Seizure. Captain, what should we do? The German warship is coming. At the moment when the destroyer of the German Navy appeared, the sailors on the tanker Statue of Liberty panicked. Though, tankers are very large. Compared with him, the destroyer is simply a small one. However, if it is about combat power, then it has to be reversed. The tanker is big, but it is slow, has low defense, and has little attack power. Destroyers are small, but whether they use naval guns or torpedoes, they can easily tear tankers into pieces. At the same time, facing the destroyer's speed of more than 30 knots, even if the tanker wanted to escape, it would have no chance. Captain, the Germans radioed us to stop the ship for inspection immediately, said a sailor. Asshole. Damn the Germans. This is the high seas, not their territorial waters, and we are American tankers. When is it their turn to check? The captain said angrily. Captain, do we want to resist? What should we do if the Germans use force? Said a timid sailor. The captain hesitated for a moment. I didn't expect the Germans to deploy warships. It seems that Britain will not be able to go. Send a telegram to the Germans. We are on the wrong route, and we will return immediately. Yes, Captain. The sailor immediately went to send a telegram. However, they soon received a reply from the German warship, and their attitude was still very tough, demanding that the Statue of Liberty tanker must stop immediately for inspection. What to do, Captain? The Germans demand that we stop the ship immediately, or they will open fire. Ignore them. We will return immediately. They are just scaring us. They may not really dare to fire. After all, we are Americans. If something happens to us, it will cause diplomatic disputes between the two countries, said the captain. He said this not only to cheer for the crew, but also to cheer for himself. The oil tanker Statue of Liberty ignored the warning of the German destroyer and turned around directly, preparing to leave this sea area. However, their behavior obviously could not satisfy the German warships. Captain, the Americans said they took the wrong route and leave immediately. The signalman reported to Captain Smile. Captain Smile was the commander of the German destroyer, HMPH. What the Americans said is a lie. How could they take the wrong route for such a big oil tanker? What if we let them go, and they continue to sail to the UK after we leave? What to do? Captain Smile sneered. Sir, are we going to open fire? But, it is an oil tanker. If it is hit, it may catch fire, and cause the entire oil tanker to burn. The gunner said. Warning shot, don't really hit it. Such a large oil tanker, plus the oil they carry, is not a small amount. If we can capture this oil tanker, we will all make merit for it. Captain Mir smiled. The Ministry of the Navy gave them an order to immediately seize a ship transporting prohibited materials to the UK once it was discovered. These ships will all be sent to German ports. As for whether it will be returned in the future, it is very difficult to say. Among other things, if the German army wants to land in the British Isles, it will also need a large number of ships to transport troops and guarantee their supplies. Therefore, this naturally requires a large number of ships. If part of the shipping capacity can be resolved by detaining American ships, this will greatly reduce the pressure on German merchant ships. Yes, sir. The gunnery commander nodded. 2 minutes later, the destroyer's two twin 105mm main guns began firing. Boom. Boom. 4 105mm artillery shells roared towards the Statue of Liberty. My god. The Germans are firing. They want to kill us. Damn, don't they know we are a tanker? How dare they open fire on us? That's murder. The American sailors on the Statue of Liberty oil tanker all screamed. They all knew that, if they were hit, they would surely die. Even the captain of the oil tanker Statue of Liberty was frightened, and his face had turned pale, with no blood left. Boom. Boom. The shell exploded in front of the Statue of Liberty tanker, splashing jets of water. This made the sailors on the ship, in addition to being frightened, breathe a sigh of relief. If the German warship hits directly, then they will be dead. Damn, the Germans are warning us. Captain, we should stop the ship immediately. Otherwise, we will all die here, said the first mate. Okay, stop the ship, the captain said helplessly. He knew that, if he did not give the order to stop the ship, even if the German warship would not hit them, the frightened sailors would definitely not let him go. The oil tanker Statue of Liberty slowly stopped. The German destroyer immediately leaned against it. Soon, Captain Smile personally led more than a dozen Marines to board the oil tanker Statue of Liberty. After the no navigation zone was delineated, in order to have strong force when inspecting those merchant ships, Marshal Earl Tirpitz specifically asked the Marine Corps to send additional personnel to the warships. On each battleship, 1 or 2 squads is enough. Sir, hello, we are Americans. We really lost our way accidentally. I promise, we will return immediately and will never violate your country's ban. The captain stood in front of Captain Smile, nodded and bowed, hoped to escape this. However, he will soon discover that this has no effect at all. Search the entire ship and find the logbook, Captain Smile ordered. Suddenly, the captain's face became very ugly. Their destinations are recorded in the logbook. Sir, this is really a misunderstanding. The captain wanted to explain, but what responded to him was a black muzzle. He immediately raised his hand in fright, not daring to talk nonsense anymore. "Sir, I found the logbook. They are going to Manchester," a German soldier reported. "Now, do you have anything else to say?" Captain Smile turned and stared at the captain. At this moment, the captain's face was pale, and he didn't know what to say. HMPH. On behalf of the German Empire, I'm announcing that this ship has violated the prohibition of the German Empire. From now on, it will be detained indefinitely by the Imperial Navy. Captain Smile said coldly. "No, you can't do this. We are Americans," shouted the captain. However, what responded to him was a ruthless asterisk of the gun. Chapter 390, Diplomatic Turmoil. After Germany delineated the no-sail zone, due to various reasons, there were a lot of ships from other countries forcibly breaking into the no-sail zone. Among them, the most are undoubtedly American ships. A large number of American merchant ships and tankers, regardless of the German ban, wanted to transport the urgently needed supplies of the British for huge profits. The British made great efforts for these materials, and of course, more importantly, they provoked disputes between the United States and Germany. The prices they charge Americans are very high. The price of a shipment of copper ingots or other non-ferrous metals has tripled before the war broke out. It can be seen how crazy those American businessmen will be under the influence of such a large profit. For these profits, they are not even afraid of beheading. Of course, the consequence of the Americans doing this is that the breaking fleet has reaped a lot. During the first day of operations, more than 50 American merchant ships were seized. On the second day, it directly rose to more than 80 ships. 3 days later, the number of American merchant ships forcibly seized by the German Navy had reached 200. Even if the United States is a maritime power, losing so many merchant ships at once is enough to make them feel bad. Not to mention, in the face of the pursuit of the German Navy, many Americans resisted. In the process of escaping, several merchant ships were directly sunk, resulting in the death of hundreds of Americans. The harsh measures taken by the German Navy undoubtedly shocked all countries in the world. Many people have realized that the Germans are not just talking. Although their huge profits make them, no matter how much money they earn, they still have to spend it. Otherwise, it is useless to make more money. This made many merchant ships who originally planned to forcibly break into the no-sail zone, had to give up such an idea. For the sake of your own life, let's make less money, Your Highness. The phenomenon of merchant ships from various countries forcibly breaking into the no-go zone has basically been controlled by us. Under our strong pressure, those guys are honest. However, I want to let those guys break in for a few more days. In this way, we will be able to get more merchant ships. Maybe even the merchant ships needed by the army to land in the British Isles in the future can be enough. Marshal Earl Tirpitz smiled. "Oh, so many? How many ships have we seized these days?" Qin Tian asked. "It would be great if Britain could be completely trapped to death because of this. After being cut off from overseas trade, how long can the British survive? Maybe when the German army lands in the British Isles, it will be able to destroy Britain without any effort." As for the seized American merchant ships and the materials transported on them, it was a complete surprise, Your Highness. In just 3 days, we have detained more than 200 American merchant ships, including merchant ships from other countries. The number is more than 250. The value of those merchant ships alone is an astronomical figure. Not to mention, those merchant ships also transported a lot of supplies we need. Marshal Earl Tirpitz smiled very happily. According to the usual practice, those merchant ships and the goods on the merchant ships belong to the Navy. After they are sold, the Navy is free to spend that money. Not only can it be used to improve the treatment of officers and soldiers, but it can also build more warships, bringing the strength of the German Navy to a higher level. Well, the harvest is indeed good. However, so many merchant ships have been lost. The Americans will definitely not let it go. The foreign minister must be busy. Qin Tian said with a smile. "Your Highness, no matter what, these merchant ships are already in our hands, and they will never be returned to the Americans, right?" Earl Marshal Tirpitz asked. He was a little worried that the cooked duck would fly away. "Don't worry, Marshal. Since those merchant ships have been seized by us, it is absolutely impossible to return them to the Americans. Anyway, they violated our ban first. Even if they protest, it is just a war of words with them, that's all. Anyway, we won't back down this time. Qin Tian said. The Americans have challenged Germany in defiance of repeatedly the German ban. Then, they will naturally have to pay for it. The seized merchant ships are considered the price paid by the Americans for this. What if the Americans refuse? Said Marshal Earl Tirpitz. Your Excellency, Marshal, I think you want the Americans to join the Allied powers because of this, right? In that case, it will be the turn of the Navy to show its talents. At that time, the Imperial Navy can naturally teach the Americans how to behave. Qin Tian said. Haha. Earl Tirpitz, who had been guessed by Qin Tian, couldn't help laughing. In fact, the US government was indeed furious about the fact that the German Navy forcibly seized the US merchant ship. Even with the capacity of the United States, the loss of so many merchant ships at once caused them a great headache. Those merchant ship owners are all rich. They joined forces to put pressure on the government, which immediately put the US government under tremendous pressure. In addition, the German Navy not only detained American merchant ships, but also opened fire and killed many Americans, which made the US government unacceptable. After all, this can already be regarded as Germany's ignorance and slap in the face of the United States. The US ambassador to Germany went to the German Foreign Ministry as soon as possible and urgently met with German Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wachter, expressing the US protest to him. Your Excellency, the Foreign Secretary, your country's Navy brazenly attacked American merchant ships, causing a large number of casualties of innocent American civilians. This behavior is completely an act of war. Your country's unreasonable seizure of American merchant ships has caused a lot of losses to the United States. The US government demands that the German government immediately stop this behavior and at the same time apologize to the US government and compensate for the loss. The US ambassador looked indignant. However, von Kidron-Wachter looked indifferent, as if he didn't pay attention to the protests of the Americans. Your Excellency, the merchant ships of your country ignored the ban of the German Empire, forcibly broke into the no-sail zone designated by us, and transported prohibited war supplies to the UK. That's why the Imperial Navy detained those merchant ships. As for the sunk merchant ships, then I'm sorry. They tried to escape, and the Imperial Navy had to open fire. So, all this is because your country's merchant ships were at fault first, and the Imperial Navy had to do that. Von Kidron-Wachter pushed the blame completely, and also blamed all the responsibilities on the Americans. Chapter 391, Dispatch the Navy. The American ambassador was trembling with anger at what von Kidron-Wachter said. It was their people who died, and their merchant ships were also detained. It turned out they were wrong. Your Excellency, Foreign Secretary, your country is making unreasonable words. American merchant ships sail freely on the high seas. Your country's unauthorized designation of no-sail zone is a violation of freedom of navigation. The US government will never recognize your delineated no-sail zone. Yes. The American ambassador was furious. Your Excellency, whether you admit it or not is up to you. Anyway, Germany just needs to approve it. Von Kidron-Wachter replied arrogantly. Regardless of whether the United States admits it or not, as long as ships from other countries break into the restricted area, the German Navy will detain the ships. This is the answer of the German government. The attitude of the German government made the American ambassador very angry. At the same time, I also know that the attitude of the Germans this time may be quite tough. It is almost impossible to get the Germans to make concessions through diplomatic efforts. Your Excellency, in addition, I have to remind you and your country, on your merchant ships, many war supplies that the Empire has explicitly banned from being transported to the UK were found. The Empire can completely understand this as your country is supporting Britain is fighting against the Empire. If the Empire continues to pursue, it can even regard your country as a hostile country to the Empire. Therefore, we hope that your country can stop such behavior. Otherwise, the relationship between our two countries will be inevitably affected. Von Kidron-Wachter continued. Your Excellency, the Foreign Minister, our businessmen are just conducting normal overseas trade. Your country is destroying trade freedom. The American ambassador now doesn't know what to say. Excellency, if you insist on making excuses, then I can't do anything about it. However, I can tell you very clearly that, since the no-fly zone has been demarcated, we will strictly enforce it before the end of the war. Any challenge, we will all defeat it. Von Kidron-Wachter's attitude was very resolute. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, you are bullying the weak. The United States is not a weak country, and we will not let go of any behavior that violates the interests of the American Republic. The attitude of the American ambassador is also very tough. Under the circumstance that the attitudes of both sides are very tough, this meeting is doomed to be the result of an unhappy breakup. The Americans will not compromise easily. Similarly, after Germany has delineated a no-fly zone, it will not be easily revoked unless the war is over. Otherwise, the no-fly zone will continue to be implemented. The German Navy will also always detain merchant ships from other countries that break into the no-sail zone. After receiving the report from the ambassador to Germany, the US government became even more furious. Damn the Germans, they deceive people too much. Don't they think that the world is really invincible? President Woodrow Wilson was furious. In his view, Germany's behavior is a complete violation of their national sovereignty and an act of war. Your Excellency, the behavior of the Germans is really bad. Moreover, their attitude is also unacceptable. The American Republic can no longer tolerate it. Otherwise, the Germans will be even more unscrupulous. The people in the country, they will also oppose us. Those guys in the Republican Party are even more looking forward to driving us out. Secretary of State Bryan said, "Everyone, what should we do about this incident?" President Woodrow Wilson asked, "Your Excellency, we need to show the Germans that we are tough. Let them know that this time the United States of America will not back down unless they apologize to us and release the seized ships and pay us for our losses. Otherwise, we will never let it go," War Secretary Garrison said. However, will that make the Germans misjudge that we are preparing to join the Allied powers? If this leads to the Germans declaring war on us, then the problem may be serious. Vice President Marshall said, "The current war situation is very unfavorable to the Allies. Even the Americans dare not assert that, if they join the Allied powers, they will definitely reverse the situation of the war. This also makes the US government no longer want to be involved in the war. Of course, if Britain and France can resist the German attack, stabilize the line of defense, and even make the war situation develop in their favor, the United States will inevitably join their side to fight. Your Excellency, I think we can properly show a tough attitude. However, we must not be involved in a war. If a war breaks out, the US Navy may not be able to withstand the Germans. Our east coast will suffer from the Germans' threat," Secretary of the Navy Daniels said. Although, such an answer is hard to accept. But President Woodrow Wilson knew that was the truth. The United States now has a strong industry, but its military strength is too weak. Moreover, what is even more terrible is that military strength cannot be improved in a short period of time. Especially for the Navy, the construction cycle of their warships is often as long as 2 or 3 years. Although the US Navy has begun to build a new batch of warships. However, when these warships are in service, the war may be over. President Woodrow Wilson nodded, avoiding getting involved in the war as much as possible, which is also very necessary for the United States. After all, with their current strength, they are still unable to confront Germany. Your Excellency, I suggest that we send a fleet to our merchant ships. In this way, we can undoubtedly show our attitude. If the Germans back down, then our merchant ships can undoubtedly ignore their embargo. If the Germans are still tough, then we have to think more carefully. Minister Daniels said. "What's your opinion?" Woodrow Wilson asked. "Your Excellency, Minister Daniels' suggestion is very good. In that case, we will not only show our attitude, but at the same time, we will not go to war with the Germans. We also have an explanation for the people in the country." Secretary of State Bryan also said. He meant very clearly that, if Germany continues to be tough, then they can only back down. The domestic people can also understand who made their military power so poor. In that case, they would also have good reason to expand their armaments. Other cabinet ministers did not object. Therefore, President Woodrow Wilson issued an order requesting the US Navy to send a powerful fleet to US merchant ships, thereby expressing the attitude of the US government. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392, Tense Situation. I have to admit that the strength of the US Navy is still very strong. As early as before the Dreadnought was born, the US Navy built a total of 24 pre-dreadnoughts of level 7 and became one of the world's 3 major navies. In order to deter Japan, the US Navy also organized the Great White Fleet to tour the world to demonstrate the strength of the US Navy. It's just that after the British and German dreadnoughts were built and put into service one after another, those old-fashioned pre-dreadnoughts became obsolete overnight. As a last resort, the United States had to start building dreadnoughts and began to catch up with the British and German navies. So far, the US Navy has built 12 dreadnought ships of the 6th level, and there are still many warships on the berth, which are under intense construction. This also makes the strength of the US Navy rank 3rd in the world. It's just that, compared with the British Navy and the German Navy in the top 2, the gap is a bit big. When a large number of American merchant ships were detained by the German Navy, and there were American civilian casualties, all sectors of American society were angry. They have asked the US government to express a tough attitude to Germany, asking Germany to apologize, compensate for losses, and so on. At the same time, the US government also hopes to find a way to go down, so it requires the US Navy to send a fleet to merchant ships. In addition, this has another purpose, which is to test Germany's determination. Provide a reference for the next step of the US government. General Fletcher, you should understand what your excellency means. This time, our navy escorting the merchant ship is not really going to break into the no-go zone of the Germans. Of course, if the Germans don't intercept it, we can try it. However, the possibility of this is very small. Therefore, we must try our best to avoid the situation of misfire with the Germans. Minister Daniels told Franz Frey, commander of the US Navy's Atlantic Fleet. Admiral Sheh said. Admiral Fletcher nodded. Your Excellency, I understand what you mean. Although such an order makes people feel a little aggrieved. Who makes our strength so far behind the Germans? If our navy were stronger, the Germans might not dare to be so unscrupulous. Our people would not die at the hands of the Germans. Yes, General. Your Excellency, the President has approved a new round of warship construction plans. In a few years, we will have more powerful battleships in service. By then, we will no longer have to be afraid of the Germans. Minister Daniels said. Yes, Your Excellency the Minister. Admiral Fletcher replied. Minister, what if we are attacked by the Germans? We must fight back, right? Admiral Fletcher asked. Secretary Daniels thought for a while, and then said, if the Germans attack first, then of course we can't just sit still. I think His Excellency's order is that we can't provoke a conflict, and we can't fire the first shot. However, if the Germans attack, if we dare to attack, we can naturally fight back. However, I think the Germans should not be so bold. After receiving the authorization from Minister Daniels, Admiral Fletcher was relieved. If you just get beaten and don't fight back, it would be too boring. Of course, Admiral Fletcher also notes that the strength of the German Navy is very powerful, far from being able to resist the US Navy. Therefore, it is naturally the best to be able to avoid misfires. General, this time is up to you. May God bless us. Secretary Daniels said. God bless America. Admiral Fletcher said firmly. On February 22, 1915, the main force of the US Navy's Atlantic Fleet set off from the Norfolk Naval Base and sailed into the Atlantic Ocean. This time, the Atlantic Fleet of the US Navy can be said to have assembled all the main battleships of the US Navy, including 2 Nevada-class battleships, 2 New York-CLASS battleships, 2 Wyoming-class battleships, and 2 Flo battleships, Ridder-class battleships, 2 Delaware-class battleships and 2 South Carolina-class battleships. The United States has built a total of 12 dreadnought ships of the 6th level, all of which are here. Among them, the Nevada-class battleships and the New York-CLASS battleships are equipped with 356mm main guns. The other warships are equipped with 305mm main guns. In addition to these capital ships, there are also a large number of cruisers and destroyers, bringing the number of warships in the entire fleet to more than 50. There is no doubt that this is already a very large fleet. Apart from the United Kingdom and Germany, the other countries may not be able to gather so many warships. The US Navy made a big move, which immediately aroused the vigilance of the German side. The Minister of the Navy, Marshal Earl Tirpitz, Chief of Naval Staff Marshal von Pohl, Commander of the High Seas Fleet, Admiral Reinhard Scheer, and Imperial Crown Prince Qin Tian were all called to the office by William II. Everyone, the American fleet, has left the port. There are 12 cutting-edge battleships, plus other warships, more than 50 large and small ships. I want to know, what are the Americans going to do? Do they want to go to war with the Empire? William II looked gloomy. Although the strength of the US Navy is not strong, the current main force of the German Navy is used to suppress the British Navy. If the US Navy goes to war with the German Navy at this juncture, it will inevitably restrain part of the German Navy's strength. It will even have a certain impact on the entire battle situation. In that case, the situation would not be very good for Germany. What William II hopes most now is to defeat Britain and France and win this war, and he doesn't want to make extra troubles. Further, in my opinion, the Americans sent their fleet to sea just to express their attitude. Therefore, we don't have to be afraid of them at all, Qin Tian said. Oscar, what if there is any conspiracy between the Americans and the British? William II was obviously not completely relieved. Father, we will order the break-off fleet to intercept the Americans. If they dare to trespass in the no-fly zone, then we will launch an attack and eat this fleet of the US Navy in one fell swoop. After losing this fleet, the Americans at the same time, the main force of the High Seas Fleet also went out to sea and approached Scapa Flow, so that the main force of the British Navy did not dare to act rashly. Qin Tian said, once a fight breaks out, can our fleet be strong enough to deal with the American fleet? William II asked. Although William II knew that the German Navy's fleet was very strong, the main force of the fleet was approaching battle cruisers. And the battleship of the US Navy is the famous Turtle battleship. Chapter 393, William II's ambition. The main force of the German Navy's break-off fleet is still 4 Tier 4 12 battle cruisers, including 3 Blücher-class battle cruisers, 3 Moltke-class battle cruisers, and 3 Diver-class battle cruisers, Ringer-class battle cruisers and 3 Mackensen-class battle cruisers. Among them, the Mackensen-class battle cruiser has just joined the break-off fleet. Although, compared with battleships, there is a certain gap in the defense of battle cruisers. However, the German Navy's shipbuilding thinking originally focused on the defense and survivability of warships. Therefore, the defense of the battle cruisers of the German Navy is also very strong. At least, it is much stronger than the British battleships that value speed and firepower. This is why in previous naval battles, the battle cruisers of the German Navy were able to beat the battleships of the British Navy violently. However, the battleships of the US Navy pay attention to defense and firepower, and despise speed. This makes the defense of the US battleships very strong, as if they were turtles. It is not unreasonable for William II to be worried. However, Qin Tian was full of confidence in the battle cruisers of the German Navy. Your Majesty, if the Americans really dare to forcibly break into our no-fly zone, our breaching fleet will definitely be able to eliminate them. Even if the main force of our breaching fleet is battle cruisers, the US navies of the 12 battleships, except for the 4 battleships equipped with 356mm main guns, the remaining 8 are all battleships equipped with 305mm main guns. And our breakthrough fleet has 6 ships equipped with 380mm main guns. There are 3 remaining battleships equipped with 343mm main guns and 305mm main guns. Moreover, the main guns of the US Navy are all 45 times the caliber, while our main guns are all 50 times the caliber. At the same time, counting if there is a gap in the performance of the main guns of the two sides, our firepower will have an absolute advantage. In terms of defense, according to the information we obtained for our purpose, the defense of the battleships of the US Navy is not stronger than ours. If there is a gap in the performance of armor steel, we are no worse than the United States in this respect. Therefore, the strength of our combat fleet is completely higher than that of the US fleet. As for combat experience, we are much stronger than the US Navy. Therefore, once the two sides really go to war, the victory must belong to our breaking fleet. The Imperial Navy Minister, Marshal Earl Tirpitz, looked confident. William II put his mind at ease this time. Regardless of whether there is a war with the United States, since the Imperial Navy can take advantage, then naturally there is nothing to be afraid of, Your Majesty. If possible, I would suggest taking advantage of this opportunity to destroy the US fleet in one fell swoop. If we can eliminate all the latest warships of the US Navy in one fell swoop, then the US Navy will be devastated. Even if there are still many warships under construction, but that will take time. By the time those warships of the US Navy are in service, we may have won the war, Marshal Earl Tirpitz suggested. William II was stunned for a moment, but then he felt that this seemed to be a good opportunity. However, Qin Tian immediately objected to this suggestion. Father, Your Excellency Marshal, it is not a good time to start a war with the Americans. If we start a war with the United States, it will make us make more enemies. Although, our relationship with the United States is already very bad. But however, the two sides did not really tear each other up. If a war starts, it means that this war will probably take a long time. Although, we have already made full preparations before the war broke out. However, we have already made full preparations before the war broke out. The longer the war drags on, the worse it will be for us. Therefore, it is best for this war to end within 2 years. In that case, it will not have too much impact on the economy of the empire. Therefore, I think, as long as the Americans don't take the initiative to declare war on us, we'd better not go to war with them. In this case, it's in the best interest of the empire. Qin Tian said. Your Majesty, His Highness the Crown Prince is right. It has been half a year since the war started. Although we have made a lot of preparations before the war. However, due to the impact of the war, the economy has inevitably been affected. If we can ending the war within a year, is undoubtedly the best result for the empire. If the war is dragged on for 2 years, our economy will be severely damaged. In that case, even if we win the war, it's not cost effective. Bernhard von Bülow, Prime Minister of the Empire, also said, Your Majesty, judging from the information we have obtained so far, the possibility of the Americans going to war with us is very small. They should have to do so more to cope with domestic pressure. As long as our attitude continues to be tough, they will definitely compromise in the end. Von Falkenhayn also said, King William II thought about it and had to temporarily suppress the idea of bringing down the United States. Although, he also believes that the United States will be a major opponent of Germany in the future. Therefore, if the United States can be defeated in this war, it would be the best. However, because the national strength does not allow it, it has to be temporarily abandoned. However, William II was not discouraged by this. Anyway, he is not very old. He believed that the United States could not be defeated in one fell swoop in this war, and it would be possible to defeat the United States in the next war in another 10 or 20 years. He still has plenty of time to wait. Well, since everyone thinks that the Americans are just pretending, then we just need to be vigilant. If the Americans dare to take the initiative to attack, then we must not let them go. Catch them, take this opportunity and crush them in one fell swoop. William II said. Yes, Your Majesty. Everyone replied. Everyone. The strategic center of the empire is still to defeat Britain and France and win this war. However, the government departments must also be prepared. The territory we obtained from the Russians needs to be digested. Digest as soon as possible. These territories can also make the strength of the empire take off as soon as possible. William II said. Yes, Your Majesty. Afterwards, everyone took their leave and left. William II's eyes fell on the map hanging on the wall. The territory of the German Empire has expanded a lot. If it can win in the follow-up war, Germany will dominate the whole of Europe. Such a result made William II very satisfied. Chapter 394, Scared. The main force of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet, leaving Wilhelmshaven Naval Base, includes 5 Bavaria-class battleships, 5 König-class battleships, 5 Kaiser-class battleships, 5 Helgoland-class battleships, and 4 the main battleships including the Nassau-class battleships have all left the port. The huge fleet sailed into the North Sea. The actions of the German Navy made the British Navy on the other side of the North Sea very nervous. Churchill even ordered the Royal Navy fleet to prepare for battle, to prevent surprise attacks by the German Navy. At the same time, the main force of the German Navy was exhausted, which also made Churchill feel a little bit tingling. The main force of the German Navy is too strong. There are as many as 24 battleships alone. Among them, 10 battleships are equipped with 380mm main guns, 10 battleships are equipped with 343mm main guns, and only 4 battleships are equipped with 305mm main guns. If the 12 battle cruisers of the German Navy are added, the German Navy has a total of 36 capital ships. This number is much higher than that of the Royal Navy. Even if the Queen Elizabeth class and Revenge class battleships are in service, there is still a big gap between them and the German Navy in terms of the number of capital ships. Not to mention, previous naval battles have proved that the capital ships of the German Navy have almost an overwhelming advantage in defense and firepower. Therefore, if the Royal Navy wants to defeat the German Navy and reverse the situation, it may be even more difficult. At least, Churchill intends to never fight recklessly with the German Navy before the capital ships that will be built later enter service. However, many things are beyond his control. The British Navy does not intend to fight a decisive battle, but the German Navy will not let them continue to develop. Among other things, once the no-fly zone is truly established, Britain's good days will come to an end. After overseas trade is completely cut off, Britain will be dragged to death alive. At that time, in order to solve this problem, the British Navy will have to take the initiative to launch an attack to defeat the German Navy and break the German Navy's blockade of Britain. Therefore, in this war, the Royal Navy is undoubtedly at a disadvantage. It will be very difficult for them to reverse the situation and defeat the German Navy. The British side did not forget to inform the American side of this news. Now Britain is eagerly looking forward to the fact that the United States can join the camp of the Allied powers to fight, which makes them naturally please the United States in every possible way. The main force of the German Navy was exhausted, which really scared the US government enough. Secretary of the Navy Daniels even suggested to President Woodrow Wilson to order their fleet to return immediately. After all, compared with the strength demonstrated by the German Navy, the US Navy is really far behind. The number of battleships alone is only 1/3 of that of the German Navy. In terms of combat effectiveness, it is probably only 1/4 or even 1/5 of the German Navy. With such a disparity in strength, it is indeed not a wise choice to provoke Germany. If the German Navy wants to deal with the US fleet, they are definitely not opponents. However, after careful consideration, President Woodrow Wilson still ordered the fleet to continue to operate according to the predetermined plan. The reason is mainly for the face of him and the US government. The words have been released and the appearance has been made. If the fleet is ordered to return at this time, won't make it everything fall by the wayside? More importantly, he and the US government will also lose face because of this. Prestige will be lost as a result. If you want to seek re-election, it is even more idiotic. Therefore, Woodrow Wilson had to bite the bullet and continue to hold on. Of course, in order to avoid a real misfire with Germany, which caused the United States to be unfortunately involved in this war, the US Navy suffered a disastrous defeat. President Woodrow Wilson specifically asked the fleet led by Admiral Franz Fletcher to exercise restraint in this operation and try to avoid war with Germany. For them, this time the action has shifted from demonstrating against Germany to appeasing the domestic people. The actions of the German Navy have undoubtedly shown their tough attitude to the world. If the United States continues to be tough, there may only be one result, which is to lead to the outbreak of war. Although doing so made both the US government and the US Navy feel aggrieved, there is no way around it. Can't really go to war with Germany? In that case, it is the most unfavorable for the United States. Admiral Franz Fletcher, commander of the US Navy's Atlantic Fleet, who led the US fleet to the east, remained silent for a long time after receiving an urgent telegram from the US Navy Department. As an admiral, he certainly didn't want to encounter such a thing. However, this is impossible. He can also understand who puts the strength of the US Navy at a complete disadvantage. If the strength of the US Navy is stronger than that of the German Navy, it will not be like this. In order to avoid any accidents, Admiral Franz Fletcher summoned the captains of the battleships and asked them to be more cautious in their next actions, making sure to avoid friction after encountering the German Navy. Incident of gunfire. You know, many wars broke out suddenly because of emergencies. The US Navy's actions this time are more like playing with fire. If you don't pay attention, it will detonate a war. The US government has been frightened, but the German Navy doesn't know it. Therefore, after receiving a telegram from the Ministry of the Navy, Lieutenant General Spey, the commander of the Breakthrough Fleet, ordered the Breakthrough Fleet to enter a state of emergency combat readiness. Breaking through the light cruisers and destroyers of the fleet, they began to cruise the Atlantic Ocean, searching for the location of the US fleet. Only when they found the US fleet could they accurately intercept it. After all, Germany does not want to really go to war with the United States. Therefore, it is undoubtedly the best to intercept the US fleet and let it retreat. If the US fleet is not intercepted, they will break into the no-fly zone designated by the German Navy. For the glory of Germany, they may have to really attack the US fleet. In that case, war will inevitably break out. The submarine force of the German Navy also entered the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, looking for the US fleet. Although, the size of the US fleet is huge. But for the vast Atlantic Ocean, this is nothing at all. The entire search operation is tantamount to find a needle in a haystack. However, as long as the American fleet continues to march towards Britain, the possibility of the German Navy discovering them is still very high. Chapter 395. Intercept. Germany and the United States, two powerful countries in the world, dispatched their navy to confront each other in the Atlantic Ocean, and there is a great possibility of war. This undoubtedly attracted the attention of the world. Originally, the war between the Allied powers and the Entente powers was hailed as a battle for New World hegemony. Originally, Germany had already gained the upper hand in this war. But now, the United States unexpectedly shows signs of joining, which undoubtedly makes this war more complicated and confusing. With the power of Germany, it has already gained the upper hand in the war with Britain and France. But if the United States joins in, whether this advantage can be maintained is very difficult to say. It's just that anyone with a discerning eye knows it. Americans, unless their brains are caught by the door. Otherwise, they would never be involved in the war at this juncture. Because, judging from the strong strength shown by Germany, even if the United States joins the war, it will be difficult to defeat Germany. At least, for a short time, Germany will still have the upper hand. By the time the industrial strength of the United States is transformed into military strength, Britain and France may not be able to persist. At that time, even if the United States is fully fired, it will still not be able to defeat Germany. The Atlantic Ocean is not only a natural barrier for the United States, but also restricts the outward development of the United States. Because, if the United States wants to project military power externally, it also needs to cross the Atlantic Ocean. This is simply not possible without the support of a strong navy. Although the strength of the US Navy is very strong, the potential for the future is also great. However, compared with the German Navy that is now in full swing, there is still a big gap. This is the reason why the US government had to take such measures. In the Atlantic Ocean in February, the temperature is very low and the sea water is cold. A submarine of the German Navy is cruising in the mid-Atlantic waters. Although, the range of the German submarine is not too far. However, with the support of a large number of submarine supply ships, the German Navy's submarine force can still expand its activities to the mid-Atlantic waters, and even directly advance to the east coast of the United States. However, the United States and Germany are not at war, so apart from the occasional German submarine that will appear in the eastern waters of the United States, the main area of activity of the German Navy's submarine force is still the East Atlantic waters, especially the waters near the United Kingdom, especially the waters of Germany. hunting area for the submarine force. In the past few months, countless British merchant ships have been sunk by them. Boss, we haven't found anything yet. What are the guys above thinking? That we are going here to search for the US fleet? The Atlantic is so big, who knows which route the Americans will take? A submariner confronted the boat. Major Donitz said. Perhaps those Americans have been scared and fled back. After all, this time we can be said to be the main force. Okay, stop talking nonsense. Now that the order above has been issued, do we have other options besides executing the order? Do you want to disobey the order? We have found traces of the US fleet. For us, it's still a great achievement, Major Donitz said. Although, he also believes that searching the US fleet in the Atlantic Ocean is like finding a needle in a haystack. But he also knew that, if he wanted to intercept the US fleet, he had to discover the US fleet first. For this reason, the German Navy sent a large number of submarines and light warships to the depths of the Atlantic Ocean to search for the US fleet. Major Donitz and his submarine have been sailing on the surface of the sea and have not dived, because in this way, the submarine can maintain a high speed and search a larger area. Perhaps it is the reason why God favors Major Donitz. This time, their luck was also better. At noon on February 27th, Major Donitz's submarine spotted the US fleet in the mid-Atlantic waters. Did the Americans send out all their property? Donitz couldn't help sighing when he saw the huge fleet in the distance. I really don't know if the Americans want to go to war with the Empire. However, if they dare to go to war with the Empire, the Imperial Navy can easily destroy them. Major Donitz nodded. Indeed, although the US fleet is very strong, there is still a huge gap between it and the Imperial Navy. Send a telegram to the flagship immediately. We have found the Americans, Major Donitz ordered. The submarine will soon report the news of the discovery of the US fleet to the battlecruiser Mackensen, the flagship of the broken fleet. Vice Admiral Spee ordered them to continue to follow the American fleet. At the same time, mobilize the fleet to rush to the location of the US fleet. Although the speed of the submarine is not fast, if the US fleet keeps cruising at a low speed, there is no problem keeping up with them. But it is a pity that Major Donitz and the others tracked the US fleet for a day before they were discovered. The US Navy sent several destroyers to chase them away. Under unavoidable circumstances, Major Donitz had no choice but to order the submarine to dive to avoid it. When they came up again, there was no trace of the American fleet. However, since the traces of the US fleet have been exposed, it is obviously impossible to hide it any longer. On March 1st, a German submarine once again spotted the traces of the US fleet. However, at that time, the American fleet was not far from the British mainland. General, we have spotted the Americans. They are about 600 kilometers west of the island of Ireland. At their current speed, it is estimated that they will be able to reach the no-sail zone we designated tomorrow. A staff officer reported to Lieutenant General Spee wrote, "Command the fleet, move forward at full speed, and be sure to intercept the Americans." Lieutenant General Spee ordered. Yes, General. However, in terms of time, we may be too late. Which warship is the closest to the Americans? Vice Admiral Spee asked. The light cruiser Königsberg. Let the light cruiser Königsberg rush over immediately and entangle the Americans. Find a way to buy us enough time. Lieutenant General Spee ordered. Yes, General. However, it is undoubtedly very difficult to entangle the US fleet of as many as 12 battleships with a light cruiser with a displacement of less than 5,000 tons. However, this is also impossible. You can't let the US fleet break into the no-fly zone, designated by Germany, just because the main fleet can't arrive in time, right? After receiving the order, the light cruiser Königsberg immediately rushed to the predetermined sea area. Chapter 396, Impact. The light cruiser Königsberg is a new cruiser built by the German Navy. While Qin Tian paid attention to the construction of battleships, battlecruisers, submarines and aircraft carriers, he also attached great importance to the construction of small and medium-sized warships. Coupled with the unprecedented ample funding of the German Navy, the German Navy built a large number of capital ships, while also building many small and medium-sized warships, which made the overall strength of the German Navy continue to rise. The light cruiser Königsberg has a displacement of 5,500 tons, is equipped with 3 triple-mounted 150mm main guns, and has a maximum speed of 35 knots. This speed is not inferior to some destroyers. Therefore, during the breakup war against Britain, all light cruisers of this class were assigned to the breakup fleet. Sir, the flagship's telegram. The communications officer handed a telegram to a middle-aged officer. The middle-aged officer took a look at the telegram and frowned involuntarily. General Spee really thinks highly of us. He actually asked us to intercept the American fleet. But the Americans shouldn't dare to open fire on us, right? The middle-aged officer murmured. Immediately, he ordered the battleship to turn around immediately, preparing to go to the predetermined sea area to intercept the US fleet. This middle-aged officer is none other than the well-known Marshal Erich Rieder in later generations, head of the Navy of the Third Reich. However, the current Erich Rieder is far from growing up. At the age of 39, he is just a lieutenant colonel in the Navy, serving as the captain of the light cruiser Königsberg. On March 2nd, the US fleet approached the no-fly zone designated by Germany. General, shall we continue to move forward? According to the no-fly zone designated by the Germans, we are only 50 kilometers away from them, a staff officer asked cautiously. After all, it is very difficult to say what kind of reaction the Germans will have if they forcibly break into Germany's no-fly zone. If it is not done well, it will directly attack them. After the German Navy has demonstrated its extremely powerful strength, the generals of the US Navy, even if they are very angry in their hearts, have to think twice at the same time. Once the battle with Germany is detonated, the consequences are not something he can bear. Are there any German warships nearby? Admiral Fletcher asked. General, no German warships were found nearby. Admiral Fletcher thought for a while, and then said, command the fleet to move forward, and at the same time, guard the surroundings. Yes, General. Although the staff officer was a little hesitant about this order, he still carried it out meticulously. In the face of the no-fly zone of the Germans, it would be too shameful to withdraw back in such a desperate way. I want to see what they can do to us when we enter the no-fly zone of the Germans. If you run into a German warship, at worst, just get out. Admiral Fletcher had already made up his mind to break into the no-sail zone designated by Germany, especially when there are no German warships around. This is undoubtedly an excellent opportunity. However, when the US fleet was more than 10 kilometers away from the no navigation zone designated by Germany, a German warship appeared in front of them. This German battleship is the light cruiser Königsberg. They have rushed to this sea area before. However, it took a while to search for the traces of the US fleet. When they found the US fleet, they found that the US fleet was actually trying to break into the no-fly zone designated by Germany. Report to the flagship immediately. We have discovered the US fleet. The Americans are preparing to break into our no navigation zone, and our ship has begun to intercept. Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder ordered. Yes, sir. The light cruiser Königsberg quickly greeted the US fleet. Although the warships of the US fleet is much larger than the Königsberg. However, they acted very bravely, as if they were not afraid at all. General, a German warship has been spotted. At the same time, the US fleet also spotted the light cruiser Königsberg. General, the Germans sent a clear telegram by radio, claiming that this is a no navigation zone designated by Germany, and requesting us to evacuate this sea area immediately. Otherwise, it will be a provocation to Germany. Tell them, this is the high seas, and the US Navy has freedom of navigation. Let them leave immediately. Admiral Fletcher ordered. If they were forced back by a light cruiser of the German Navy, it would be too embarrassing. After all, there are as many as 12 capital ships in the US fleet, and there are countless other cruisers and destroyers. Those capital ships can easily tear the light cruiser Königsberg into pieces. Even among those cruisers, there are quite a few that can rival the Königsberg. Therefore, Admiral Fletcher took the warning of the light cruiser Königsberg as a provocation from ants to elephants. Sir, the Americans say this is the high seas. Let us leave. The staff officer ordered Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder. High seas. So what? After the Empire has designated this place as a no navigation zone, we have the final say here. Order the turrets to aim at the American flagship. Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder ordered. Sir, you don't want to attack the US fleet, do you? They will tear us to pieces. A fright flashed in the staff officer's eyes. Don't you worry, this is just a warning to the Americans. Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder ordered. The turret of the light cruiser of the German Navy turned and aimed at the US Nevada, the flagship of the US fleet, which made Admiral Fletcher even more angry. Damn. The Germans, what do they want? Are they so arrogant that a light cruiser can defeat us? Their 150mm main guns can't even tear our armor. Admiral Fletcher sneered. Order the fleet and continue sailing. I want to see if the Germans dare to open fire. If they fire, immediately return fire and tear them apart. Anyway, they attacked us first, and we are only fighting back in self-defense. Admiral Fletcher gave the order. The US fleet ignored the warning of the light cruiser Königsberg and continued to advance, which made the situation even more tense. Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder also frowned tightly. However, he quickly made up his mind. Order the battleship to advance at full speed. Since the Americans will not retreat, we will hit them. Our naval guns cannot tear their armor. However, our bow can definitely tear their side armor. There was a smile on Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder's mouth. Chapter 397, Madman. Thick smoke billowed from the chimney of the light cruiser Königsberg. Under the pressure of the high temperature steam, the steam turbine began to run rapidly, and the speed of the battleship immediately began to increase continuously. A few minutes later, the speed of the light cruiser Königsberg increased to more than 30 knots. On land, 30 knots might be nothing at all. However, for warships in the ocean, the speed of 30 knots is undoubtedly very fast. Especially, at this moment, the light cruiser Königsberg is rushing towards the target, which is the battleship Nevada, the flagship of the US fleet. Such a move has even aroused the attention of the US fleet. General, the Germans are approaching us quickly. A US military staff officer roared in horror. What's going on? What do those Germans want to do? Admiral Fletcher also exclaimed. Hell, they don't want to hit us, said a US military officer. Admiral Fletcher was stunned for a moment. Subconsciously he wanted to order to fire and sink the light cruiser Königsberg. However, the words were already on the verge of his mouth, but he swallowed them back. Of course, with the strength of the US fleet, the light cruiser Königsberg could be easily sunk and torn to pieces. However, if they dare to open fire, it will inevitably lead to a war between the United States and Germany. Sir, what should we do now? The German battleship is getting closer and closer to us, and it is already very dangerous. Warn them, stop advancing immediately. Otherwise, we will open fire. Admiral Fletcher ordered with a livid face. It's just that the light cruiser Königsberg completely ignored the warning of the US fleet. At a speed of up to 32 knots, the battleship rushed towards the US Nevada, the flagship of the US fleet. General, the Germans ignore us. Crazy. Are those Germans a group of lunatics? Don't they know that, if they dare to hit our battleship, it will be an act of war? Admiral Fletcher roared loudly. In his eyes, the German naval officers and soldiers on the light cruiser Königsberg of the German Navy have become lunatics one by one. However, it is that kind of lunatic who is undoubtedly the scariest. Sir, do we want to fire at them? At this distance, we have a very high chance of hitting them. As long as one main artillery shell hits, it can be severely damaged or even sunk. Our crisis can be resolved, suggested an officer. Idiot. If we open fire, then we will have to break out of war with Germany. No one can bear such consequences. Admiral Fletcher said with a cold face. Of course he wanted to give an order to sink the light cruiser of the German Navy. However, the consequences were not something he could bear. Therefore, he could only suppress the anger in his heart. Sir, what should we do then? Do we just watch the Germans crash into us? With the size and speed of the Germans' hull, it is certainly impossible to sink us. However, we can also be severely damaged. Order other destroyers and cruisers to ***** us. If necessary, they can ram the German warship. Admiral Fletcher issued an order. Since the German Navy wants to ram their flagship, they can naturally use the same means to fight back. However, the response of the US fleet was still a bit slow. After the speed of the light cruiser Königsberg has been fully increased, the light cruisers and destroyers of the US Navy that have not yet completed the speed increase cannot stop the light cruiser Königsberg at all. Instead, it was avoided. Hans, very good. You did a great job. You are definitely the best navigator in the Imperial Navy. On the bridge of the light cruiser Königsberg, Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder laughed heartily. Of course, my dream is to drive a warship like a speedboat. If one day I can become the navigator of a battleship, that would be great. The navigator, Major Hans, smiled. Hans, I promise, you will definitely have a chance. One day I will become the captain of a battleship, and I will definitely let you be my navigator. Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder said very solemnly. Time passed by every minute and every second, and the light cruiser Königsberg was getting closer and closer to the battleship Nevada. They have successfully thrown off the American warships that came to intercept them, and aimed their bows at the weak midship of the US Nevada. God, those Germans are really crazy. They really dare to bump into it. Idiot, turn around quickly. Don't let the Germans hit you. Admiral Fletcher roared loudly. For the US Navy, every battleship is an extremely valuable combat power. If they are hit hard, this will greatly damage their combat power. Very good. All posts pay attention. We are about to crash into an American warship. Everyone, hold on to the handrails so that you don't get thrown out. Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder ordered. For a while, the German naval soldiers on the light cruiser Königsberg all tightly grasped things that could fix their bodies so as to avoid throwing them out due to the strong inertia when they hit. When the battleship is sailing at high speed, once it is thrown out, it means that it is vulgar. Damn it, make anti-collision preparations. Admiral Fletcher saw that he couldn't get rid of the light cruiser Königsberg of the German Navy, so he had to order anti-collision preparations with a livid face. Now, he can only pray that the powerful defense of the battleship Nevada can withstand the impact of the light cruiser of the German Navy. Boom. Crunch. Under everyone's gaze, the light cruiser Königsberg slammed into the midship of the battleship Nevada. Although the armor of the battleship Nevada is very thick, the armor of the midship part is also as thick as 343 millimeters. However, under the cutting of the sharp bow of the light cruiser Königsberg, the armor was still torn open, making that tooth-biting sound. However, after all, the light cruiser Königsberg is nothing more than a medium-sized battleship with a displacement of only more than 5,000 tons. Hitting a battleship with a displacement of up to 30,000 tons, the consequences can naturally be imagined. The bow of the entire battleship was almost destroyed. Of course, exchanging his own serious for the serious injuries of a battleship of the US Navy, such a deal is undoubtedly very cost-effective. Chapter 398, Confrontation. General, how are you? On the battleship Nevada, a staff officer helped Admiral Fletcher who had fallen on the deck, and asked with concern. When it hit just now, the impact was so strong that Admiral Fletcher fell down. The white uniform of the Admiral was even more stained with dirt. Dust and stains from coffee, spilled on the deck and so on. In normal times, Admiral Fletcher would definitely be furious, and then immediately put on clean clothes. But now, he couldn't care less about it. Report the loss. What about a loss? Admiral Fletcher asked. General, there is a big hole in the middle of the starboard side by a German warship. The damage control personnel are trying to plug the hole. However, it is very troublesome. Their suggestion is to close the adjacent watertight compartment. A staff officer reported road. In that case, what impact will it have on the battleship? Admiral Fletcher's face became very ugly. General, in that case, the battleship will be tilted to a certain extent due to too much water. At the same time, the speed of the battleship will also be greatly affected. The main turrets will also be unable to continue shooting due to the tilt of the battleship. It must return to the shipyard and make repairs. The staff officer continued to report. Bastard. Admiral Fletcher couldn't help cursing. Before encountering the main fleet of the German Navy, they lost a battleship first, and it was the most powerful flagship among these battleships. Although, it's just a heavy blow. However, the blow to the morale of the US Navy will undoubtedly be very large. Where are the German battleships? Admiral Fletcher asked. General, the German warships didn't get any cheap. Their bows are all destroyed, and they have to return to the shipyard for at least several months. Idiot. One of our battleships was severely damaged, and the Germans only had one light cruiser severely damaged. In this comparison, it is obvious that we have suffered a loss, and we still suffered a big loss. Admiral Fletcher cursed road. Indeed, if calculated in this way, the US Navy has indeed suffered a big loss. But, what else can they do? Very good, reverse immediately. On the light cruiser Königsberg, Lieutenant Colonel Erich Reeder was very satisfied with the damage they caused to the battleship Nevada. Although, he was not able to sink the opponent, which made Lieutenant Colonel Erich Reeder a little regretful. However, it is also very good to be able to obtain such a result. If it really hit and sank the American battleship, that would be a big deal. If it is not done well, the current situation will be further escalated. Yes, sir. However, our bow is also destroyed, and it is still flooded. We may have to return to the shipyard for repairs. The navigator said to Lieutenant Colonel Erich Reeder. Well, let's retreat immediately. We hit and injured the American flagship, and this is undoubtedly a hornet's nest. If we don't leave, if the Americans get angry, we may not be able to leave. Erich Reeder, the lieutenant colonel, ordered. After completing the intended purpose, it is obviously impossible to stay any longer. He knew that those Americans must have torn their hearts. Although, the bow of the light cruiser Königsberg was severely damaged. However, the powertrain is not affected. In the case of reversing at full speed, insert the bow of the battleship Nevada into the hull, and slowly withdraw. And this action couldn't help causing secondary damage to the battleship Nevada. General, the German warship is going to escape. A staff officer reported to Admiral Fletcher. Bastard. You hurt our flagship, and want to run now. How is that possible? Surround them. Admiral Fletcher gave an order angrily. General, are we going to sink them? Admiral Fletcher gritted his teeth and shook his head. When the light cruiser Königsberg hit it just now, they didn't fire to sink it. Now, of course, it is even more impossible to fire and sink it. The Germans injured our flagship. We have to give us an explanation. Admiral Fletcher said through gritted teeth. If possible, he would definitely order the sinking of the light cruiser Königsberg without hesitation. However, reason made him suppress this thought. At this time, a large number of warships appeared on the sea to the north. The main force of the German Navy's broken fleet arrived successfully. 12 huge battle cruisers, leading a group of small and medium-sized warships, came aggressively. General, the German main fleet has appeared. A staff officer reported to Admiral Fletcher with a trembling voice. What? Admiral Fletcher was also very nervous, especially when he used the binoculars to see the main force of the German Navy's broken fleet. His face was even more ugly. Although, the capital ships of the German Navy are all battle cruisers. However, he, who had obtained detailed information a long time ago, knew that those battle cruisers were difficult to deal with. That is a powerful battleship that can confront the battleships of the British Navy head-on. In terms of defense, even facing their battleships, I'm afraid they won't be able to find out where to go. Not to mention, the battle cruisers of the German Navy still have powerful firepower. In particular, the 380mm main guns of the Derfflinger class battle cruisers and the Mackensen class battle cruisers can completely penetrate the armor of any of their battleships. The arrival of the main force of the German Navy's break-off fleet quickly attracted the attention of the US fleet. This also allowed the light cruiser Königsberg to escape easily. The main force of the German Navy appeared, and the US fleet naturally did not dare to forcibly intercept the light cruiser Königsberg. In that case, I'm afraid it will cause a new round of confrontation. Not everyone can afford such consequences. On the battle cruiser Mackensen, Lieutenant General Spee is listening to the report. Lieutenant Colonel Erich Reeder, very good, courageous, and decisive. I will report this to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Lieutenant General Spee smiled with satisfaction. Lieutenant Colonel Erich Reeder commanded the light cruiser Königsberg and rammed the US Nevada, the flagship of the US fleet. This is undoubtedly very beneficial to the German Navy. If the Americans dare to do it, they will be even more disadvantaged in the absence of a capital ship. The German Navy's break-off fleet and the US fleet immediately confronted each other in this sea area. If the two sides are added together, there are more than 20 battleships. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399. Word of mouth. General, what should we do now? The main force of the Germans is coming. The German light cruiser that hit us also fled back. Bastard. Let the Germans hand over the light cruiser that deliberately rammed us. Their actions are completely provocative to the Republic of America. The captain of the light cruiser must be handed over to us for trial. Admiral Fletcher, he ordered with a dark face. The flagship was bruised, which was a slap in the face for the US Navy and even the US government. If there is no sign at all, where will this put their face? Yes, General. The staff officer nodded and immediately went to send a telegram. However, he didn't think the Germans would follow suit. The fact that the Germans dared to hit their flagship directly just now shows how arrogant the German Navy is. It's just that Admiral Fletcher has already issued an order, so he can only obey it. On the battlecruiser Mackensen, the flagship of the German Navy's breakthrough fleet, Vice Admiral Spee was in a very good mood. Although, the fleets of the two sides are still facing each other. But no matter what, the German Navy obviously has the advantage. General, Lieutenant General Erich Rieder requested to return. When they hit the American flagship, their own losses were not small, and they need to return to the country for repairs. The staff officer reported to Lieutenant General Spee. Well, they are allowed to return. In addition, send a destroyer to go back with them. Lieutenant General Spee ordered. This is naturally done to prevent the Americans from making small moves. Yes, General, the Americans claim that our light cruiser Königsberg rammed their flagship for no reason and demand that we apologize to them and hand over the light cruiser Königsberg and Captain Erich Rieder till they deal with it. The communications officer reported to Lieutenant General Spee. Ridiculous. Tell the Americans that they are trying to break into our no-fly zone. This is a provocation to the German Empire. The behavior of the light cruiser Königsberg is to protect the interests of the German Empire. It is absolutely impossible for us to. The light cruiser Königsberg and Captain Erich Rieder were handed over to them, Lieutenant General Spee said. Yes, General. The communications officer immediately went to send a telegram. The tough reply of the German Navy made Admiral Fletcher furious. However, apart from cursing a few words and venting his anger, he had no other way at all. Who put them at a complete disadvantage now. If further radical actions are taken, the conflicts will be intensified and even lead to misfires. And this is exactly what the United States is trying to avoid. The fleets of the two sides are more than 10 kilometers apart. Through telegrams, you come and go to accuse each other, and there is a big war of words. However, the troops are strictly restrained to avoid provocative behavior that would escalate the conflict. Obviously, both sides do not want to further intensify the situation. Whether it is the Americans who have suffered losses or the Germans who have taken advantage, they are consistent in this regard. The news that the light cruiser Königsberg of the German Navy rammed and damaged the battleship Nevada, the flagship of the US fleet, was also reported to the country as soon as possible. Haha. Well done. Your Excellency the Marshal, Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder, is completely a talent. I think his actions are worthy of recognition. I suggest that he should be rewarded. And, he should be rewarded. Promote him to a more important position. Qin Tian laughed loudly. Who Erich Rieder is? Of course Qin Tian knows. He is the Admiral of the Third Reich. He was in charge of the German Navy after World War I for 15 years. Of course, in another time and space, the naval strength of the Third Reich was not very good, far inferior to the Army and Air Force, so that they did not have much record in the war. However, gold will always shine. In this time and space, Erich Rieder also showed his talent. Qin Tian naturally wanted to use such a talent. Well, Your Highness, Lieutenant Colonel Erich Rieder is indeed a rare talent. He has already led the light cruiser Königsberg back. When he returns to China, the Admiralty will reward him and promote him. Military rank, said Marshal Count Tirpitz. How is the situation now? Are the Americans still confronting us? Qin Tian asked. The Americans have not withdrawn, and they look like they won't let it go. HMPH. They're just putting on a show. If they really want to attack, they probably don't have the guts to do it again. Qin Tian snorted coldly, feeling very unimpressed by the Americans' actions. However, Your Highness, the US government will definitely protest us again next time. Your Excellency the Foreign Minister must be busy again. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said. Haha. In this war, we must find something for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to do, right? Otherwise, wouldn't they be too idle? As for the protests of the Americans, simply ignore them. If the protests are useful, they will not. There are so many disputes. Qin Tian couldn't help laughing. The so-called protest is just because the strength is not as good as others, so they acted very angry. Isn't it the same for Huaxia in later generations? After being bullied, I always protest. However, that didn't seem to work at all. Others still bully us. Therefore, the strength of freedom itself has become stronger, so that others will not dare to bully us. This is the last word. Those weak protests should be less frequent. Indeed, the United States soon expressed a serious protest to the German government on the grounds that a warship of the German Navy deliberately rammed the flagship of the American fleet. The US ambassador to Germany repeatedly questioned the Imperial Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wachter. US Secretary of State Bryan even summoned the German ambassador to the US to express the attitude of the US government. It's just that this is of no use at all. The two sides are still accusing and sparring constantly. Really played a role? Almost no. Of course, the US government is also very angry at the damage to the US Nevada battleship. When President Woodrow Wilson heard the news, he broke one of his favorite coffee cups. In his view, the actions of the US fleet this time are just a pretense to deceive the domestic people. If the Germans cooperate, this matter will pass. But who knows, the Germans not only did not cooperate, but also took the most severe counterattack. This made President Woodrow Wilson feel as if he had been slapped severely. Chapter 400, Compromise. Gentlemen, Admiral Fletcher asked us, what should we do next? Should we continue to let the fleet stand there? The battleship Nevada was seriously damaged. Although the watertight compartment was closed, it was still under construction. Water. Now it is more dependent on pumps to pump out the seawater pouring into the warship. Secretary of the Navy Daniels introduced to the ministers of the US cabinet. President Woodrow Wilson frowned. Minister Daniels, is the Nevada really that badly injured? That is the best warship we have in service. The flagship of the US fleet was hit by a light cruiser of the German Navy and immediately lost its combat effectiveness. This made Woodrow Wilson very annoyed. No matter what, it is the flagship of the US fleet. When the Germans did this, they were clearly hitting them in the face. If it wasn't for his inferior strength, he would have ordered the fleet to launch a counterattack. Your Excellency, the Germans were too ruthless. Their light cruiser cut through the armor of the battleship Nevada with its sharp bow. Although, the battleship Nevada the displacement is 6 times that of the German light cruisers. But it is like stabbing beef with a knife. This makes the battleship Nevada more injured than we imagined. If possible, it is best let the battleship Nevada return immediately and enter the shipyard for repairs. Otherwise, it will have a great impact on the performance of the battleship. Minister Daniels said. President Woodrow Wilson nodded. He understood. Everyone, tell me, what should we do now? President Woodrow Wilson looked at a group of people. These ministers of the US cabinet. One by one, you looked at me, and I looked at you, without saying a word. The problem now is really too difficult. The fleets of both sides made an appearance in the Atlantic Ocean, that they were tense, and might go to war at any time. However, in fact, the two sides are desperately restraining to avoid further deterioration of the situation. To put it bluntly, Americans just want to save face. But it's a pity that the Germans just don't give them face. As for the US government, is there any way to turn the table? So, it's stuck there now. Your Excellency, why don't you let the Nevada be withdrawn? After all, it is our most powerful battleship, and it cannot be lost in vain. Secretary of State Bryan said. If we withdraw the battleship Nevada in this way, we will only have 11 battleships there, one less than the Germans. If there is a fight, wouldn't it be even more disadvantageous? Vice President Marshall was a little worried. Your Excellency, the withdrawal of the battleship Nevada does not affect the overall situation. Judging from our analysis of the strength of the German fleet, even if the battleship Nevada was not injured, once a fight broke out, we would not possibly a German adversary. Secretary Daniels shook his head. Minister Daniels' answer undoubtedly made some senior officials of the US feel a little uncomfortable. However, this is the fact. There is no way. Who made the current strength comparison like this government? Your Excellency, in this case, it is better to withdraw all the fleet. Anyway, we are not the opponents of the Germans. Even if our most elite fleet is sent out, it will not be able to defeat the Germans. If we continue to stay there, it will be dangerous. The odds will increase further, suggested Treasury Secretary McAdoo. After all, such a huge fleet stays on the ocean, burning oil all the time. In addition to others, the cost will be very large. Then how do we explain it to the domestic people? Obviously, the domestic people will definitely not accept the reality that the government is weak. In the end, coupled with the fueling of the hostile Republican Party, it might directly cause their government to collapse. Such consequences are obviously not acceptable to these cabinet ministers. One by one, they have achieved their current status and power with great difficulty, and no one wants to give up just like this. Everyone. Our fleet has held back 12 advanced German battle cruisers. This is equivalent to holding back almost 1/3 of the German Navy. In such a under the circumstances, is it possible for the British to defeat the Germans? If the British can win, then we simply let the fleet stay there. It can be regarded as our best effort to help the British. Secretary of War Garrison suddenly fantastic. Such a suggestion was made. President Woodrow Wilson couldn't help but shine. In his opinion, this is indeed a very good way. From the standpoint of the United States, it is natural that Britain and France can win the war. If Germany wins, a powerful European hegemon will emerge and pose a great threat to the United States. At that time, let alone the United States dominating the world, even if it wants to hold on to the American territory, it will be very difficult. A German empire whose military power dominates the world will become a nightmare for other countries. On the other hand, Britain and France have been severely damaged by this war. Even if they win the war by luck, it will be difficult to recover in a short time. And that is undoubtedly the opportunity for the United States. Well, now comes the problem. When the US Navy dragged down the German Navy's breaking fleet, could the British Royal Navy defeat the German Navy's main fleet? Everyone's eyes were on Secretary of the Navy Daniels. Your Excellency, gentlemen. This may be very difficult, even if we hold off 12 German battle cruisers. However, the German High Seas Fleet still has 24 more powerful battleships, and the British Royal Navy, after the previous series of disastrous defeats, the strength has been greatly damaged. Although the British Navy's new 10 elite battleships have entered service, I personally don't think that their 10 battleships plus one vote of obvious battleships are the same. It can defeat the elite troops of the German Navy. I think the British may not have this confidence. Their only hope should be placed on the subsequent warships. And the German no navigation zone has realized the British with a complete blockade. It may be very difficult for the warships of the British Navy to serve. The result is naturally conceivable. Minister Daniels said. Suddenly, everyone in the meeting room fell silent. After a while, President Woodrow Wilson said, "Let General Fletcher withdraw." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.